Check one, two. You're live.
All right, town meeting members, let's work our clickers.
Oh, Mary Hill's coming up.
To the town meeting members coming in, please use your clickers. Test those clickers out. I do anticipate we will be using them on Article 4. So let's make sure they're all working. We're doing a clicker test for all those coming in. If you have any issues, you can see the town clerk in the back and by the soundboard. All right. The 2024 Fall Town Meeting, Night 3, will please come to order. The meeting requires 100 members for a quorum. 122 in attendance. I see there's sufficient number of members present to present us to open the meeting, and I so do declare. Welcome to all, to our town meeting members. Welcome back for a fabulous Night 3. I also want to welcome again members of our town staff, members of boards and committees, town consultants, and article presenters, as well as residents and other visitors who have all joined us tonight, either here or also through WinCam. Welcome one and all. I am Heather Von Mering, your town meeting moderator. Please refer to me as moderator going forward. We will continue our meeting today with the tradition of the Pledge of Allegiance. For all those members who would wish to join me, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may please be seated. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to recognize Bob Johnson from Precinct 5. Bob retired from town meeting after Springtown meeting after serving our body for over 40 years. Bob spoke about the construction of this very building back in the 1970s at town meeting. And as with all of our decisions here, the work makes a difference for many generations to come. I've always found him to be kind, thoughtful, and an individual with tremendous integrity. However, with his very quiet and humble nature, he asked for no recognition. With that, here is to over 40 years of service to the town meeting, and we wish him nothing but the best in his retirement from serving the town of Winchester as an elected official. We will be starting shortly with Article 4 and then moving to the citizens' petitions. I'm hoping to break around 8 p.m. again, where I hope you'll visit the Girl Scouts and enjoy the refreshments. As noted on Night 2, a few motions have been modified. As we get to those, I will do my best to help you. There are a handful of handouts that have those motions on them, including, they're all beautiful colored. We have orange, pink, green. We also have white, which I'll be talking about shortly. And there's also, as a reminder, a memo from Town Council regarding Article 4 that was handed out last week. As noted on Night 2, your moderator received new information regarding Article 29 that was on the consent agenda regarding the PEG Access and Cable Related Fund. This was a consent agenda, and I'm hoping that at this time the body will be able to move quickly through some procedural steps to amend Article 29 appropriately. Since we took the vote, the town received a late check of $50,157.46 for this fund. Blame Comcast, they were slow to deliver. The money we receive from Comcast and or Verizon has always passed through the town to WinCam by a consent vote of town meeting, and it would be in WinCam's best interest if we would appropriate the additional receipt of $50,157.46 to them now versus making them wait an additional 6 months until the spring town meeting. With this new information, the moderator would like to ask the meeting to reopen Article 29. Thank you. There's the motion is to reconsider Article 29 so it can be amended to include $50,157.46 in appropriation from the PEG Access and Cable Related Fund. Is there a second? It requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. We're going to now quickly move through the vote in order to make it on order and on record. It is moved and seconded that Article 29 be amended and approved as follows: that the town vote to appropriate $249,228.06 from the PEG Access Cable Related Fund to be used for PEG Access service programming, monitoring the cable operator's compliance with the franchise agreement, and to prepare for renewal of the cable franchise license, including any associated expert and legal services. Any questions or comments? Seeing no one rise, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it unanimously, and the motion to amend and accept it is passed unanimously. All right, let's go to Article 4. Article 4 is regarding 160 Forest Street in town. The owner left their property, 160 Forest, to the town at their death. To finalize a land court agreement between the lien holders on the property, Winchester requires some town meetings votes. On behalf of the Select Board, who is a proponent, we will have Michael Betancourt. After that, we'll hear from a bunch of boards and committees, all recommending favorable, but I believe they may have some additional information for you that Mr. Betancourt may more insight than Mr. Betancourt may have from their expertise areas of their boards and committees. And then I will be asking town councils to speak to you prior to we have comments and questions from town meeting. On behalf of the Select Board, Mr. Betancourt.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Town meeting. Can you hear me okay? Looks like it's on. It says it's on.
Yep, it's on.
You got it? Okay. Thank you.
While you get ready, I'm going to read it into order. Sound good?
I've got it here.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Town meeting. Before us is Article 4, 160 Forest Street. The motion for the town meeting tonight is that the town vote to authorize the Select Board to accept title to and convey to a qualified nonprofit or governmental organization affordable housing restriction, a property located at 160 Forest Street, and to authorize the Select Board to subsequently convey the care, custody, and control and ownership to the Winchester Affordable Housing Trust of said property, subject to a said restriction for affordable housing purposes. I'm done already, but
that is not 10 minutes.
Thank
Go,
you.
continue.
Thank you. This is a picture here of Asa Fletcher, who lived in Winchester from 1820 to 1880. Many of you may not know, but the town has a fund that he created for the benefit of the poor of Winchester. A lot of those appropriations we make in executive session. Applications come in through the Council on Aging, and we see a lot of residents who are struggling with, a lot of them are rent, utilities, car payments, things that make it really difficult for them to survive here. Asa Fletcher put $10,000 in an account years ago for the benefit of the poor, and it grew in excess of $500,000, and we've been using that to help support Winchester residents ever since. He was a carpenter. He was in the sharpshooter unit, volunteered for the military. He was injured and discharged. And through the Fletcher Fund is where we met Marcia Chase Rice. She requested funds to help her with her taxes, to help her with repairs for her home, and so she could stay in Winchester in a home that she loved and had been passed through her family through her father. This is a visual of Marcia's actual last will and testament, and you can see in Article 4, she says, I devised the real estate located 160 Forest Street consisting of the land and home situated on said land to the town of Winchester. And she asked it to be known as the Chase House in memory of her father, Howard Chase Jr. And so that is what brings us here tonight. There has been a lot of litigation here, mostly around transferring the property from the estate to the town. Ms. Rice passed away on November 6, 2020. We received a nominal but not final title to the property at 160 Forest per the terms of her will. We unfortunately found out that there was a Mass Health lien in excess of $700,000 on the property at that point. We asked Mass Health if they would waive the lien, something that they have never done before, the excess here, and likely will not do again if we put an affordable housing restriction on it. So they stayed the litigation, and they are waiting for the outcome of the meeting tonight to see what we decide. So getting in a little bit into the affordable housing restriction, Mass Health agreed to waive the lien on the Forest Street property if we put an affordable housing restriction on it. Unfortunately, the doctrine of merger title means that when we can't both hold the property and the restriction on it at the same time. In essence, the land court said, we're not going to let Winchester be the enforcement mechanism on its own property, right? So we need it to pass to another organization before we pass it on to someone else through a project. So we will be using the Affordable Housing Trust, which we created for exactly this purpose several town meetings ago. And then it will go through the state's 30B procurement process, which involves putting out an RFP and having a lot of public input. So upon approval here tonight, here are the next steps. The town will be free to record the new certificate of title that it petitioned for from the land court, and the title would there vest with the town. The affordable housing restriction will be conveyed to a third party. Mass Health will then release the lien on their certificate and dismiss the litigation. So the $700,000 will be wiped away voluntarily as we have met our bargain with them of making it an affordable housing unit. At that point, the Affordable Housing Trust will conduct a feasibility study, which will involve public input and certainly engagement from the community. And then we will start the process after that of developing an RFP to say what it is that we want to do with the property. And then we will enter a permitting process after that. We'll review the award and make the applicant receive the property that has the highest award based on what the town wants to do with the property. So oftentimes when we put an RFP out, we identify what we think is the highest and best use from the feasibility study, and we give a score to them, and they score certain points. If they have more affordability, if they want to keep the house intact, if they want to have an ADU, if they want to make it a disability unit. So when people respond to a request for proposal from the town, they get an actual score based on the things that the community has decided through various meetings are most favorable. After that, the title will be transferred with the affordability restriction to the new entity, and we will advertise the property once built and ready to go to members in the members throughout the area. So what happens if we vote no or we defer? We will opt not to perfect title and report to the land court accordingly. We will advise Mass Health and the estate that the town meeting rejected acceptance of this gift and we're unable to meet the terms of the agreement. The property will revert to the estate of Marcia Rice to be disposed of as part of the settlement of the estate. Upon a sale by the estate, the Mass Health lien will be paid along with other debts, including taxes, and the estate will receive the remainder of it. And at that point, the town will receive nothing. So it is a big risk for us to say no tonight. We will be back in land court reporting on this in early January, and hopefully we can have a favorable report. And I think that's all I have. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you, Town Meeting.
Did you want to speak to the amendment that was put out, the green sheet?
Yes. Well, we at the beginning here. Oops, sorry. This was. I think I got it there. Yes. Yeah, so this included what I had read before, the amended version that we proposed. And it's really just to kind of clarify what we're doing for some town meeting members that had some questions, but it's not a terribly substantive change here, but more functional, I think, and just to clarify.
Thank you. With that, to read it into order, I need to waive the 7-day rule. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion passes unanimously. It is moved and second that the town vote to authorize the select board to accept title to and to convey to a qualified nonprofit or governmental organization an affordable housing restriction in a property located at 164th Street, and further to authorize the select board to subsequently convey the care, custody, and control and ownership to the Winchester Affordable Housing Trust of said property subject to said restriction for affordable housing purposes. At this time, there are town boards and committees that have recommendations. First, we will hear from the select board. Their chair, Michelle Pryor. Wait, sorry, it's yours. You're not getting any time. FinCom took no action on this article. Do we have the planning board? That's fine, whatever mic you prefer. Brian Vernalia on behalf of the planning board.
Evening, Brian Vernalia, Vice Chair of the Planning Board. The Planning Board voted 5-0 in favor of the original motion. We have not considered, obviously, the new motion. The Planning Board supports efforts to add affordable housing in town. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Further up, can we hear from the Housing Partnership Board? Oh, Marty, yes. Marty Jones would like to go first. The Affordable Housing Trust would like to go prior, which is fine. Marty Jones on behalf of the Affordable Housing Trust.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good evening, town meeting. I'm Marty Jones, the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. I am not going to speak to the issues related to mass health and the litigation and those parts of this motion, since town council and the select board are more involved in those. I'm going to speak to you about the Affordable Housing Trust, about our mission and our role in this property. I know I have a limited time, but I want to make sure that I give town meeting members a short refresher on the Affordable Housing Trust. The Massachusetts Affordable Housing Trusts are governed by Municipal Housing Trust Law of the Commonwealth. Their purpose is to provide a flexible local vehicle to create and preserve affordable housing for the benefit of low and moderate income households. Over 125 other communities across the Commonwealth have also created and used the state's Municipal Housing Trust to create their own local affordable housing trusts. These trusts have acted as municipal development teams, shepherding projects from concept to the reality of providing homes for those who need them in our state. In spring of 2019, town meeting approved the creation of Winchester's Affordable Housing Trust. Our specific mission is to support and sustain an inclusive and socioeconomically diverse community consistent with the policy objectives of the most recent Winchester Housing Production Plan through investment, education, and advocacy. To date, the Trust has supported affordable housing developments in town, but has not had the opportunity to fill one of the most important roles affordable housing trusts can play, directly facilitating new affordable housing development. We look forward to now being able to take this more active role on the 160 Forest Street site. Members of the Affordable Housing Trust have experience in real estate development, design, law, and affordable housing. We are aware how expensive the development of housing is, and the Trust strives to be an effective steward of the limited resources that we have, using them only in situations where we believe we can have an impact. As a town entity, the Trust meetings are open to the public, and we welcome the public's input and joining us in our meetings and in our mission. And also under state law, all of our activities are subject to 30B procurement requirements. Because the Trust does not control the 160 Forest Street property and has not been given responsibility for its development, we have not yet expended funds to develop detailed plans and analysis for this site. After the resolution of the Mass Health lien and the transfer of the property to the Trust, we will begin an evaluation and feasibility of the study of the site. This will give us essential information to create a framework for development and to identify the resources that will be necessary to fund the gap between the real cost of the improvements to the property and what an affordable buyer or renter could actually pay. All of this will be discussed at our Affordable Housing Trust meetings, to develop a plan. Once we have the idea of a framework, we'll put together an RFP and seek a qualified development partner and use our networks to encourage qualified development teams to respond. This is not going to be easy, finding someone for one small property. We will review and write proposals, ultimately making a selection based on criteria which we will have outlined in the RFP. The trust's involvement will not end there. We will work closely with the selected bidder to make sure the permitting and construction proceed as quickly as possible and consistent with what we have all agreed to. We urge town meeting to vote yes on Article 4 so that the work to turn this vacant property into an affordable housing resource can begin soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we hear now from the Housing Partnership Board?
Madam Moderator, town meeting members, I'm John Serbier, Chair of the Housing Partnership Board. By a unanimous 10-0 vote, the Housing Partnership Board supports the transfer of this 164th Street land and house from the town to Winchester's Affordable Housing Trust, with the restriction that this property be used for affordable housing purposes. Using single parcels of land for affordable housing, though, can be economically and financially challenging. Importantly, as Marty Jones just described, this trust has the professional skills to accomplish this objective, and therefore that was the major reason for our positive vote. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that's all boards and committees who wanted to address you. At this time, I'm going to ask that town council also provide you comments regarding this article. I asked that he be prepared to speak, as this is a very legal-based article, and he has to represent the town and this body as well.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jay Tallerman, Town Council. A lot of what I'm going to talk about, Mr. Betancourt and Ms. Jones already talked about in terms of the framework of how we got here. Some of what I'm going to talk about is also a repeat of items in my memo of November 13th, which was made available to town meeting members. The ends here, ultimately, what our vote are somewhat simple. Conveyance of land. This town meeting does that fairly frequently, conveyance and acceptance of interest in land. However, how we got here was not simple. When I became town council in town, this matter already existed. We had a willing entity, willing to give a piece of property to the town, but there was a big problem to it. The big problem was that there was a $700,000 lien on it. And that is a significant barrier because towns generally aren't in the business of accepting property with such large liens, even if they are offered to us with no potential purchase price. So the interest that the town had and the interest that the estate had was to figure out a way to manage that liability. The options were few and far between. Mass Health is an entity that is entitled to a lien. They, like a mortgage company, will closely guards those interests and rarely will give in any large amounts such as that. The estate also wanted to settle. They needed to settle the estate and be done with it. They were still accruing legal fees, and they wanted to manage this property so that it could be resolved with finality. Mass Health, too, wanted this resolved with finality. They had two pieces of litigation going, or actions or involvement in two pieces of litigation active, and they wanted to resolve it, too. Now, Mass Health does work with communities and with nonprofit participants to occasionally give some small relief from liens, and I'm talking in other towns where I've worked on this, 10,000 here, 20,000 there, if you will restrict a property for affordable housing purposes. The Chase estate did not require that it be restricted for affordable housing purposes, but it was a means to an end where we've had success in other communities of getting Mass Health, to release a lien in exchange for restriction on affordable housing. So we figured we'd give it a try, and we did. And to our surprise, and I've never seen anything like this ever from Mass Health or any other creditor who held such a large piece of property, they said, okay. Well, you can imagine this pace at which we got their signature on that agreement. We worked really hard with them to come to terms. We worked really hard in 2 agreements with the estate to come to terms. We had to tether a number of deadlines together and a number of processes together to make that happen, because everyone had different goals. Added to all of that is that this is registered land, not normal land that you would just record a deed. We would need to, before we could do any of this, get a new certificate of title issue based upon our current interest in the property, which was the bequeathment from the will. So we had to petition to land court with the assent of the estate that all this would happen, give them the agreements from Mass Health, and hope that they would agree with us. We also asked them to perhaps impose on the property a restriction on its own, so we wouldn't have to do that part of it here. Well, nothing happens quickly at the land court. Anyone who practices in the land court knows that on either side, either the registered side or the non-registered side at land court. And it takes months, and it took months here. And only recently, somewhat recently, did we get approval of a new certificate of title. That was a key piece that opened up the door for the select board to bring this forward to this body. That was the key, the $200 to pass go that would enable us to seek approval of this body. And that approval consists of 3 things. 1, accepting the property. This body has to vote to do that. 2, authorizing this body to convey to a third party, because as Mr. Betancourt said, we cannot hold that restriction ourselves, an affordable housing restriction. And 3rd, a conveyance of the property, authority to convey it to the Affordable Housing Trust. Even though they are an arm and an agency within the town, state law still requires that we get town meeting vote and authority to do that. Now, why convey it to the Affordable Housing Trust and not just to a specific developer? And that is because the entire development and process, as Ms. Jones has already suggested to you, around affordable housing trusts is that they move at the speed of business. If a town, the select board, wants to sell quickly, find buyers of, operate within the speed that you have to attract the best potential developer of a property that will go to a family in need, it's a clunky process when you're doing it through the select board. When you're doing it through the Affordable Housing Trust, they can operate as if they were any other seller. Now, there are still municipal safeguards, RFPs, there is still permitting, there's still public processes in the open meeting law, but ultimately they are more well-equipped to convey property to a proper developer, whether it be Habitat for Humanity or some other similar entity, than the select board could. So that is why they were selected by the select board as the potential intermediary before this property could go to a lower moderate income household. So now that we have part of this in place, we need to get this this body's approval to take the next steps. But this is the end of the line. Mass Health has limited patience. I can promise you that on this. The estate has limited patience. They have been waiting a long time and have been a great partner, but they want to get this estate settled. We have until the middle of January to settle this with Mass Health. That is the deadline. There is no more time. If we do not, we are going to give up our interest in the property, not record the certificate of title, and let the estate settle it so that they can be done with it and be relieved of that obligation.
Thank you. I'm going to cut you off. Your time's up. But thank you for all that information for town meeting. I hope that answers a lot of the questions, but of course, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. Comments and questions, town meeting members, please come to the microphones. Let's begin the discussion. First up.
My name's Doug Marmon, Precinct 1. I was up to see that house a little while ago. It's a very pleasant house, as you saw from the pictures. And it's a small house, which Winchester has few of because they keep getting mansionized or... Anyway, I'm very much in favor of this proceeding. I think that's a great house for an affordable house. But it seems to me that we're getting greedy. We want to develop it. That house now fits well into its neighborhood. It's very nice. And it sounds to me like we're trying to tear it down and put perhaps an eyesore in the middle of the neighborhood. I would like some assurances that the Chase House, as it was granted to the town, remains standing.
To the select board, can you please provide town meeting information regarding the anticipation? I'm not sure if you're able to vote in a surety at this point, but the town meeting is asking if you might consider keeping it the scale and size of the current house, or if you have more insight on the development.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you, Doug, as well. Absolutely. And I was just up to the house again yesterday. It is a very small lot. The house is right-sized for it. When we go through the RFP process and the feasibility study process, we can give points to people who respond in a way that preserves the house. When we say develop the property, we're not looking to knock it down and build, a 10-story building. We will need to do some work in order to maintain it. That will take some investment. We've done an evaluation of the interior of the home, and there is in excess of $300,000 to $400,000 of work that needs to be done to get it to be in the shape where we would be able to rent it or sell it to someone. So absolutely, that would be something that we would be interested in, and we can make a requirement as far as the RFP process as well.
Can you make it a requirement that the town meeting approve this development, whatever it is?
Well, yeah.
To town council, can you please provide guidance on what town meeting can do in this moment to assure the development is in the interest of Mr. Marmon?
There's actually a little bit of case law on that. Town meeting is not a permitting entity, so there's a small body of case law that suggests that town meeting does not have the authority to wade into those kinds of development issues. You can restrict at certain uses, and you can express preferences, which you are doing now, but town meeting isn't the entity that approves a specific development under law.
I believe what he's asking is, can town meeting restrict it to a single-family use on the lot?
I would say that it's difficult to read that into the scope of the article itself. I think that would also likely, I don't think that given the small size of the lot, it could essentially handle from a permitting perspective more than a house or two or a duplex maybe, but I don't think
Well,
that...
can we get an assurance that 40B will not be initiated on this lot?
In my opinion, town meeting could not make that restriction.
They're asking the select board if they would give town meeting an assurance before the vote that they would not turn this over to a 40B. A 40B developer. They're going to discuss for a minute. I hope you don't mind waiting a minute while they discuss this. All right, here is your answer. I should have played music for you.
Thank you. Thank you. In response to your question, the Select Board will work with the Affordable Housing Trust to do whatever we can to maintain the house, preserving it. Although, you know, we will go through a very public process and a feasibility study and an RFP process that will have input from everyone. And as anybody wants to be a part of that process, they will be welcome. When we talk about 40Bs, I think we generally see them as a 100-unit project, 200-unit project, but a lot of times in practice, 40B can be 1 unit, can be 2 unit, and so it would be difficult to make that restriction, but we would certainly promise to do what we can to maintain the spirit of the house. Now, that could be that we make some changes to make it handicap accessible as well, and we do some other things, but we certainly can commit to making it part of the RFP and part of the process to preserve what we can of the house. So, and I will say the alternative is we will have no say in what a developer does with that house, and they certainly could come in with a 40B project that is larger and more to scale, right? Because what will happen is if we say no, the property reverts to the estate, who will then market it for sale, most likely.
I believe that the Board of Selectmen will own this house and has the power to decide what happens to it. I am all in favor of proceeding with the mass health issues, getting the title. It's the conveying, I guess, to the Housing Partnership Board. I want the Housing Partnership, no, the Affordable Housing Trust to say that they want the house as is, and they'll make it an affordable house.
Well, they will make it an affordable house because there'll be an affordable housing restriction on it. What that means once we go through the process, we don't know. The Affordable Housing Trust is not a developer per se. We're not real estate investors. So what we do is, as Marty was explaining, we prepare things to make an improvement to the town and increase affordable housing. The size and scale of the lot, as Jay was saying, it's very, very small and very limited to what can be built there. So, well, I wish I could make a promise to you that it's going to look exactly like it does right now, but we will do our best to put that preservation piece in the feasibility study process and in the RFP process. That's what we can commit to.
I think you can commit to more than that. I think that you can commit to not tearing it down. I think the Affordable Housing Trust is a development organization, and that I don't want it developed. I want it just turned into affordable housing, and it's a plus for us. We got an affordable housing unit instead of...
I'm gonna let us keep going. I actually am going to have, I think you may be speaking something about housing as well, that I may just go to I'll come back over if you want to go, Jack.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I have a question and a comment. Doug saved you a lot of time because I was basically going to say the same thing. With regard to preservation of that neighborhood, all those houses on that street were built approximately the same time, in the late 20s and into the 30s, and there's a consistency of look in terms of size and scale, setbacks, and I would hate to see that changed. But I have a question through you, Madam Moderator, to the Town Council. Article 4 in the will, it's a long single sentence, but it says that the house will be conveyed to the town, and that the house be known as the Chase House. Am I correct in inferring that means that the house cannot be demolished, and if it is demolished, then the terms of the will are being violated?
To Town Council, the will of the will says that it should be named, the house that's there should be named and kept. Is that... it doesn't say it should be kept, it should be named. Is that implying that the house should be kept to be in the will of the will?
No, I don't read that, and we looked at that early on. I don't read that as a prohibition of potentially replacing the house with another house. Not that that's our goal. It is not our goal. It is really a naming convention, and it doesn't preclude anything. There's none of the kinds of precise language that would have to be used in order to prevent the town from demolishing if that was the best possible outcome here. I do think that I know that the select board has discussed that even if it were to be replaced with another house that would be more structurally sound, that there'd be some consideration for monuments or in some other way of a naming convention for that house so that that part of the will would be carried on.
Again, I'm not a
Follow-up?
lawyer, and I defer to your legal judgment, but it seems to me from an ethical standpoint, with the intent of the will is that the house be preserved because this house was built by this woman's father, and she's honoring her father here. And to build a new house and slap that name on that new house is a fraud in my mind. I would say that I'm trying to achieve what Mr. Marmon was trying to achieve, some kind of assurance from the select board that this house will not be demolished. They can say that right now, but I'd like some kind of assurance that that's not going to happen. And I think the will is implicit in saying that, my interpretation.
From a legal perspective, no, and I don't think town meeting has the authority to make that assurance. I think you've heard from the select board that that's how they would prefer it to occur. I'll also note that
You didn't have a question, Mr. Tallerman.
But it's as to the question, the estate itself is aware of the potential range of possible outcomes with respect to the property.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further on the question?
Diabjarius, Precinct 8. I have one quick question and then a comment. I wasn't able to determine the square footage of the lot because my Google skills are lacking. Could someone provide, through my moderator to whomever, what is the square footage of the lot?
Who?
Could you please go to a
Can you
microphone,
please say it at the mic? How
Sorry.
many square feet is the lot?
So per the Patriot Properties website on the house, it is 10,594 square feet.
Okay, thank you very much.
That is the lot, not the house itself.
Correct. So in my mind, I'm in favor of this article. In my mind, there is a pretty substantive difference between passing this and not passing this. I'm pretty sure that if this does not get taken over by the town, it will be torn down and redeveloped. A 10,000 square foot lot can easily house a very large house. My neighbor's 10,000 square foot lot, they had a beautiful old house. It was torn down. There's a very, very large house there right now. That's what the economics of modern houses are. So if we don't vote for this, then that house will be gone. My other comment is in regards to the flexibility required to provide the affordable unit. It's not easy to actually find someone who will spend $300,000 to $400,000 to renovate a house. That's an awful lot of money, and we're hoping that some nonprofit will come forward to do that because a for-profit builder certainly won't. It's just not worth it to them. They have to make money. So we really have a very narrow range of people who would be interested in developing this for an affordable house, as an affordable property. As far as I understand, there's no means of putting a market rate unit on it via, say, an ADU, because the whole property has to be under an affordable restriction. So the number of players who could take over this lot and turn it into an affordable unit are very small. So I wouldn't want to put any real restrictions, even though town council says we can't, on what the Affordable Housing Trust can do, because we just don't know what's going to happen, and we need the flexibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Further on the question?
Maura Sullivan, Precinct 1. I walked around 160 Forest, and as Doug said, the house is an attractive small cape situated on a little hill. It has beautiful views out the back and the front. The ceilings are high, there are hardwood floors. The home was built in 1938, and as you've heard, the woman who owned it wished to have it known as the Chase House in memory of her father. And those were the words in her will when she left her home to the town. If preserved, renovated, and restricted to affordable housing, the house would be a terrific example of what affordable housing can look like. An ADU could be added by right in the rear, and then we would have 2 affordable units. And since we've just passed the CPA, we could use CPA funds for this project. This would meet 2 goals of the CPA, affordable housing and historic preservation. But this is just one vision of what 160 Forest Street could look like. My concern with Article 4 as written is that it removes the ability of town meeting and residents to be part of the conversation. If we vote to transfer the restriction to a third party and transfer title to the trust, we have no more say legally. There are 2 parts to Article 4, as you've heard. One is conveying the affordable housing restriction to a third party. The second is conveying title to the property to the trust. I would like to take a pause on both conveyances, restriction and title. I would like to see town meeting vote to authorize the affordable housing use. This will show Mass Health that Winchester has taken the next step. Then we can discuss the actual development and what conveyances are needed to get us there. And I have an amendment to that effect, which I had sent to the select board, but we don't need to discuss it right this second.
Wait, did you do a motion? Okay. Further on the question?
Josh Bears, Precinct 7. 2 questions, Madam Moderator, through you to the proponents. It sounds like this doesn't cost the town anything because someone's gifting us real estate. So it sounds like we stand to benefit financially from this, potentially. But I also heard about legal fees involved in the estate. I'm just wondering, what will this cost the town once we accept title?
To the select board, can you please provide town meeting information regarding how much it will cost the town once we accept the title if the vote proceeds?
So I don't have the annual cost for you, Josh, but we have, since this will was promulgated and we took the kind of, what was the notion of the title? Nominal title. We have carried insurance on the property. DPW and others have maintained that the utilities are on so that the pipes don't burst, so that the roof stays in good order. So we've been paying to keep it, kind of in good shape and not have any systems fail. So over those 4 years, it's been about $20,000. So whether that's another $5,000 a year, I don't have the exact average, but that is what we've invested in maintaining insurance and maintaining it in some sort of habitable condition and not having it fall into more disrepair.
Thank you. Just to follow up there, legal fees resulting from the estate, will there be any extra that the town will be responsible for once it's done, they're done with it?
To the select board, can you please provide town meeting if there's additional legal fees that will be accrued?
We don't anticipate legal fees for the estate, and our town council is part of our standard contract, so there's nothing additional for his time in land court and probate court.
Okay, thank you. That was my first question. Second one is, and maybe this is just my lack of understanding the language of the motion. The description sounds like we convey the control and ownership and we eventually make it affordable housing restriction, but in the motion it says somehow we accept title and convey to a qualified nonprofit or governmental organization an affordable housing restriction in a property. So how do you convey a restriction to someone who doesn't own something that you're restricting?
To town council, can you please provide town meeting information on that question? We'll just go.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So the order of operations would be get the title squared away. So we own it, and that title is recorded. Then convey a restriction. That's the second part of the motion. Convey a restriction to a nonprofit entity that could hold the restriction, and then convey the property that is encumbered with the restriction to the Affordable Housing Trust. So that would be the order of operations.
And just clarification, is the restriction to the Affordable Housing Trust, is that the third party?
No, because they're an agency of the town. We are in the process of locating and identifying. We've had some good discussions with a few nonprofit affordable housing entities that would hold the restriction. That's kind of what they do. The goal would ultimately be that when we do, if it does get conveyed to another entity, that the restriction would then revert, that at that closing, we would then, either us or us acting through the Affordable Housing Trust, would hold that restriction at that point. So it would switch back to us. So we would be the ones that would manage and enforce that restriction at that point.
I'm glad someone understands how that works.
Thank you. Sorry, your moderator's a little, there was a mouse in the auditorium. You can give great gratitude to the Girl Scouts who came in and removed it. So, if you're wondering why there's a little disorganization over here, it's because it was over here. The select board seemed to handle it very well, but it has been taken care of by the Girl Scouts, so.
I think there's another one over here.
Oh, if you find it, notify Pete Lawson and he will grab the Girl Scouts to come get that one too. Further on the question, sorry for the delay.
Madam Moderator, Eric Shediak, Precinct 1. Many of my questions were asked by my fellow colleagues here at town meeting. I do have a couple, actually one more question is, what is that property zoned as? Is it all single family or is it a two-family capable or?
To the select board, can you please, unless you would like to turn this over to the planning board, what is it zoned as, the property? Does the planning board have that readily available, what the zoning is on that lot?
It's zoned single family in that lot, yes.
Okay, thank you. And I do have just a follow-up statement too as well. I think it was Mr. Diab who stated that at $300,000 or $400,000 of rehab, very few contractors are going to want to come in and spend that kind of money and try to make money on the deal. So I'm not sure what the answer is, but at this point I'm not sure I can vote yes on this because we can't get any sort of real assurance that it's going to remain a single-family house. Thank you.
Thank you. There are residents from the area who have asked to speak at this moment. I'm going to allow them to come to the mic as well to join you, but I need your approval. All those in favor of allowing residents of 164th Street come join us to speak, say aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Please join us at the mic. Further on the question?
Hi, Madam Moderator, Dorothy Simbali, Precinct 6. Just was following up on Maura Sullivan's comments with regard to this property. It is a Royal Berry Wills. There's not many of those left that have been not bastardized, so to speak. My apologies if anybody lives in one. But they are, I mean, they are quaint. They're part of the history of this town. And following that, I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion, or to amend the article, to include the language after the word convey. This is the language. Subject to a deed restriction to preserve the existing structure without relocation or significant exterior alterations.
Yep, give me 1 second. Subject to a deed restriction, continue.
To preserve the existing structure without relocation or significant exterior alterations. And just as sort of an example, this is similar to what was done in the Rangeley Road area. David Feigenbaum and Maureen Meister, their efforts to preserve those homes in that neighborhood, and that's what they did in that area.
Thank you. So there's a motion to amend Article 4 so that it would read, is moved and seconded that the town vote to authorize the select board to accept Title II and convey subject to a deed restriction to preserve existing structure without relocation or substantial exterior alterations. And then it continues. There's been a second? All right. With the motion,
Madam Moderator, it was actually significant. I don't know if there's a difference between significant.
substantial or significant? Significant, that's fine.
Thank you.
Significant exterior alterations. Point of order?
Thank you, Dorothy. That amendment would really be beyond the scope of what this article is and would be a permanent restriction, an indefinite one that I think that town council would support is certainly out of order at this point. So that would.
It's actually my call.
Okay.
Jay, if you want to come speak to me. If you can give me just a minute. I'm going to find it out of order, but I want to tell you why. It's different than the select board's perspective. So Article 4, we'll talk about this too as well, probably later in the evening when we get to the citizens petition. The warrant that you get, that every resident gets, not the motion booklet, but the warrant, declares what we are going to talk about. And Article 4, if you read what is in that motion booklet, does not indicate that we would be voting to put an easement on a property. That is a restriction like that. And so I do see that it's out of order, that you couldn't predict that we'd go there with this. But I do understand your sentiment and don't want to be disrespectful, but it is out of order.
So in the alternative, could we make a motion to simply accept title to the property, subject to an affordable housing restriction, but not necessarily convey it to the Affordable Housing Trust at this time? So then we can further have that option on the next round.
That I do feel is in order.
We need the exact language more.
Now, from my perspective, the select board will have different things to say about it. From my perspective, it would be in order.
So the motion would be that the town vote to authorize the select board to attach the affordable housing restriction to a property located at 164th Street in accordance with the November 13th, 2023 agreement between the town of Winchester, the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, and Joy Sellers, the personal representative of the estate of Marcia Chase Rice, period.
The town clerk's going to give it to me in writing. Give me 1 second. Do we have a second? At this time, can we hear from the select board as a proponent? Select board, we're asking for your recommendation on the motion to amend Article 4. We're waiting to hear recommendation on the motion to amend.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you for the amendment. The Select Board unanimously would support that amendment and welcome it. Town Council is making slight change. I think there had been some language going back and forth between some town meeting members, so I think that he has it. There's maybe one or two words to be tweaked there, but I think he's discussing that with the moderator at this point. So, but we would welcome that amendment. It would allow, if voted favorably here, allow us to receive the property with the restriction and start the process and come back, I would assume, hopefully in Springtown meeting.
Essentially, there's a friendly amendment to your motion to amend coming in from Town Council. And let me read it in and see if you will accept it or if you want to keep it as is.
All you have to do is just stop right there. Accepts the title to and conveys the affordable housing restriction.
They don't want to convey it to us.
You can't not. It has to be conveyed to an entity. You're not going to convey it to a third. It doesn't work. It wouldn't accomplish the law. I can't do that. So, I mean, I can leave that out, but that's the only person we're going to convey it to. I don't, that's just, agreement can change, it could be amended, that's just not good practice. We can take out this to qualify for the parties and convey an affordable housing property. We're going to convey it.
Yeah, but they want you to come in with the bottom of this.
Doesn't say that.
No, but that's, they want you to come back with
Well, we would, that's why we get rid of the last part there.
Yeah, so it's just and convey to
No, to just take out the two as well.
Thank you. So the friendly motion from your legal counsel is that it's moved and seconded that the town vote to authorize Select Board to accept Title II and convey an affordable housing restriction on a property located at 164th Street. Do you accept that friendly amendment? Convey the housing restriction.
I think what is intended by the original motion made, the original amended motion made, is to convey the property for the town to accept title to the property and authorize the Select Board to attach the affordable housing restriction to the property, but not convey it to anyone. We're accepting title to it, correct?
At this time, it's 7:40. I am actually going to ask if we can recess for 10 minutes, let them work it out, and then come back to us. So we'll take our recess for 20 minutes early, so we don't have to sit here, and we'll be more efficient use of our time. So, and those in line will come right back in line. So enjoy your, actually, let's give 15 minutes, so we'll come back at 5 minutes to 8.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to session number 3 of Winchester's Fall Town Meeting here on Monday, November 18th, 2024. My name is Alan Iden. The meeting has been dominated by article number 4, which was to have the town accept a property at 164 that was left to the town by Margaret Chase Rice, who passed away in November of 2020. The town wants to accept it and use it as affordable housing. So it gets very complicated here. There's a motion to convey it to the Affordable Housing Trust. But we heard that a lot of litigation has held up this transfer for 4 years. Mass Health has a lien on the house for $700,000, but has agreed to release it. Again, much to the surprise of our town council, has agreed to release that lien if the house is conveyed as affordable housing. But this must be settled by mid-January. There are still legal steps to be pursued after town meeting approval. The motion is to accept the title. We heard that the Affordable Housing Trust can work faster to get it developed and sold or rented to a lower moderate income household than the select board. Some of the comments by town meeting, there seems to be great concern among town meeting members and the neighborhood that the house is essentially left as it is and not knocked down, replaced with a larger house, or developed as a 40B project. We heard that cannot legally be done, but during the recess they're going to talk about ways that this can be restricted. In the will, it was known, the owner wanted it known as the Chase House. We heard that it's an attractive house, could possibly have an accessory dwelling unit put in the back, so I can get 2 affordable units out of it. It's a fairly small lot. It's a 10,000 square foot lot. We also heard that the newly passed Community Preservation Act might have funds that could be used for this because it's both historic and affordable. Another town meeting member wanted a deed restriction limiting significant exterior modifications or moving the house on the lot, but moderator ruled that not in order. So basically, the moderator has called for a recess now so the town council, select board, and concerned parties can work on wording for any amendments to this. Again, it has not been passed or rejected at this point, just a lot of discussion over the last little over an hour. So I'll be back with a recap of tonight's meeting at the end of the meeting. There is a hope that town meeting can wrap up tonight, but spending an hour on the first article may throw that into doubt. So we'll find out. We also may be going rather late. So stay with us. We'll be back with a recap at the end of tonight's session. What was great
2 more minutes. Right? I said 7:50.
Yep. Surprised that the school committee wasn't more forthwith with trying to get rid of this.
They're all pretty outdoorsy.
That was very impressive. Kudos to the Girl Scouts.
All right, town meeting at 7:55, and we have work before us. Let's take our seats. Thank you for your patience and taking your break 20 minutes early. All right, I think you're ready. So while you guys were on break, your moderator got updated that friendly amendment was accepted between the two, and it reads as it's moved and seconded that the town vote to authorize the select board to accept Title II, comma, and convey an affordable housing restriction, comma, in a property located at 164th Street. That is what the new motion for Article 4 that's being proposed for you. Do we have a second? Back over to the proponent of the motion. Any further comments?
No, it's just my understanding that then in a future town meeting, we would be asked to authorize the conveyance to some other entity, and at that point in time, we could advocate to have this structure be subject to some sort of deed restriction to preserve it in its current external state. So, but that's not in front of us today. That would be in front of us for a future town meeting when it gets conveyed to another entity that would be managing it to be an affordable property.
Thank you. Select Board, you are in favor? The Select Board is in favor. At this time, we're just debating if we want to amend the motion for Article 4. This is not over the overall article, it's just on the amendment. Should we amend Article 4 as proposed? Please stay on topic. Yep.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Carol Savage, Precinct 5. If we pass this amended language, I'd like to understand the difference between what happens versus if we pass the original language. I understand that the town would own it, have title to it with this restriction on it, which would then eliminate the Mass Health lien. But then it's sitting in some sort of a limbo. And my understanding is that it would need town meeting approval to convey it to another entity. Let's assume that Affordable Housing Trust. Do we lose time? Is my understanding correct? Do we lose time? What's different delaying that to the spring than doing it now? when I understand if it is conveyed to the Affordable Housing Trust, there would be a very public process around what gets done with the property. And if we delay it to the spring, do we have that ability to restrict what is done to the development of the property? To whomever can answer those questions.
To the Select Board, could you please provide town meeting information on this motion and how it's amended on that prong process that you have? What parts would be now? What parts would be delayed? And in that delay, what time actually are we talking about an impact? Would you like your slide back up on the process? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you, Carol, for the question. I think, this is not ideal for the way that we do business, right? We created the Affordable Housing Trust to not just be an avenue to move quickly and efficiently in the market, but to have expertise. Our Affordable Housing Trust has some of the best experts in the field of affordable housing, and they want to apply that expertise to make the town and the community better. Their process is a very public one. The process moving forward without this amendment will be, as I indicated, starting with the feasibility study. That will include public input. There will be then an RFP process that will include public input. The permitting process after that, all public input, all opportunities for people to say what they want and what they don't want. The Select Board is a little hesitant to support this. We are, because the risk of town meeting saying no to accepting this is way too high. And I'm always concerned when people vote against their interests. And if the neighborhood is concerned with that house staying there, saying no means that house is gone. I'm telling you that right now. The economics of this property means somebody buys it for $1 million and they're not going to renovate the inside of it and sell it for $1 million or sell it for less, right? So if we need to move forward with this, fine. There could be a potential opportunity for us to take it, renovate it, and rent it. Our initial strategy with this was to work with the Housing Authority to take it over. They went through, I think I shared this with you, they identified a lot of the work that needed to be done, and it was beyond the scope of what they were able to do. So I think once we go through the required 30B procurement process, I don't know how many people are going to want to respond to it if the house has to stay exactly how it is. We will see. We will have to come back to town meeting with that, and we will be doing a process really in reverse. And so it will be hard for us, but there's no bigger risk for the town than saying no to acceptance of this gift with the affordable housing restriction. And I don't know if I answered your question, but.
Just a quick follow-up?
Yes.
I think my bias is to approve the original motion, just for the record. But if this amended language passes, what would the Select Board do between now and the spring?
To the Select Board, can you provide town meeting information on if Article 4 passes as amended, what your agenda would be here for it after this town meeting before spring town meeting 25?
I don't know. I mean, we didn't plan for that, right? So, I mean, it's not how we do business. We would work with the Affordable Housing Trust, and they would take the lead on the expertise on making recommendations. We would likely do a feasibility study. We would need to find money for that. If it's not vested in the trust, it will be difficult for the trust to justify an expenditure in a property that they don't have control over. We will have to, go through that process, and we will incur expenses. But it'll be a similar public process, a very public one. But I think it'll be harder for us to attract any sort of development of the lot from someone else. So our concern is that it may take a while for anything to happen with it. Sorry, Michelle.
Okay.
Quickly.
Thank you. I favor this motion in whatever form. I think I prefer the original motion, but I appreciate your answers.
And all I was going to add, Ms. Savage, and thank you, Madam Moderator, is like, what will the select board do? At least I'm the chair until the next election. We'll do what we can. You know, we have a capital plan that everyone wants us to be working on, which we have been working on. It needs to fit within all the other things in our agenda. We will start the process. We're not the experts, but we will make progress. But I can't commit that between the budget that needs to happen and all the work that will go into the town manager's capital plan in January, that this is going to jump all the other topics on our bi-weekly agendas. That's the truth.
Thank you. Further on the question, and we're just talking about what amending, yes or no?
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. Mark Feblowitz, Precinct 1. I'm a bit confused here, and it was reflected also in Mrs. Savage's comment. I saw and heard in the presentation, the procedural presentation, that the third party, it was expressed that the third party would be the Affordable Housing Trust. And then I heard later that it can't be the Affordable Housing Trust because they are not independent of the town. And so I think one of the reasons to have this amendment go through is for all of those things about the process that are not quite settled and not quite decided be discussed and investigated and presented to us in Springtown meeting. So for that reason, I support this amendment.
Thank you. Further on the question for the motion to amend?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Dave Jarius, Precinct 8. I have real philosophical concerns about town meeting diving into the details of things like this for a number of reasons. One is I think this is going to kill any further donations of properties to the town because, you know, if I want to give my house to the town, I have no idea if it's going to go for what I want because it's going to get trapped in town meeting. I'm really concerned that town meeting, or I forget exactly how it came about, we have an Affordable Housing Trust which was set up in order to speed up this process efficiently and openly. And by having town meeting insert itself in the middle of this process, it's now delaying it even longer than if it just were going through the select board. The Affordable Housing Trust is set up just to do this. The select board has, as the chair said, an enormous amount of things to do. They are not going to be able to spend the amount of time that this property will require. They will try, but they can't predict it. And the board may change before the next town meeting. We don't have any control on that. So I just, this is not how I assumed this town would approach affordable housing. We set up a trust for a reason, and again, putting town meeting in the middle of this process is just delaying it, and in a sense, in my mind, perverting it. And that's a horrible word to use, but one of the things that I had considered was whether I would donate my property for affordable housing. I was thinking about giving it to the town. I will not do so. I refuse to do so after this vote, after this discussion, because I have no idea what's going to happen. So I understand the select board wants this decision made to accept it, and I understand why they might, as Mr. Betcourt said, they are accepting this with some concerns. I'm badly paraphrasing what you said. And I understand why they want it to go through, and I will vote for this either way, but I am not in favor of this amendment. Thank you.
Just to make a correction, town meeting is inserted because it's the law. It's our requirement to do this. So I just want to make sure it's clear. It's not that we are intentionally. They need town meeting's approval to proceed, and so we are not.
I apologize, Madam Moderator. I hadn't implied. I was just talking about the level of detail this meeting is going into.
Thank you. Further on the question?
Hi, I'm Meredith Crowley, Precinct 1. I want everybody to really think about how why are we here tonight talking so long about this issue? And it really comes down to the fact that I'm walking up the street past a neighbor and he says to me, what's going on with 160? So I go and I try to find out what's happening with the house. There is nothing on the website for the town. There is nothing. I talked to a couple of other of my fellow precinct members. We just spent the last 12 days searching all kinds of databases, digging up documents to try to understand what is going on with this property. In the meantime, I tell my neighbors, they have no idea anything is happening. And then we find minutes from an Affordable Housing Trust meeting in which they visited the property, they're consulting with contractors, they've talked with Habitat, they're looking at building a number of units. And then we finally find a tape from October 16th, where the plan is being unfolded to all the members of the Housing Production Partnership Board. None of this was ever made public. So right now, this amendment is before you to give the neighborhood time, because we learned during that meeting on the 16th that it would be a truncated process, that input would relatively be limited, and that there was no outreach to the neighborhood. So whether it's between now and the spring, to have the town do the work that they should have done when they knew about this last November of 23rd, when they were heading, 2023, when they were heading into making this agreement, and an agreement they signed this summer, when they could have approached the neighborhood in September and done something, but they have done no outreach at all. So I would urge you to support. This is a nice compromise, and think about this happening in your neighborhood. No one is against the concept of this house being affordable, but they would have liked to have been included in the dialogue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the motion to amend? All right, one more, and then we're going to take the vote.
Okay, Robin Wolf, Precinct 4, and I apologize if I'm the only person who's confused. But going back to the doctrine of merger, my understanding was that the town of Winchester could not simultaneously own the property and enforce a deed restriction. So if we convey this property to the town with a deed restriction, but it is not then conveyed to the housing trust, what is the status of the deed restriction? Is it enforceable, and if so, by who? And what happens if it isn't enforceable? To you, Madam Moderator, to
Thank
whoever
you.
is
That would go to
qualified.
Town Council. To Town Council, can you please provide town meeting that if we were to pass Article 4 as amended, what will happen with the title and who will hold it, and what status of the restriction will be in place?
So the amendment essentially accomplishes the first two parts of the original motion. It allows the town to first accept the title, and second, to convey to a third party, not the Affordable Housing Trust. That wasn't in the first motion either. Convey to a third party an affordable housing restriction. That's all the amendment does. It stops short there at the conveyance of the property as a whole. So it allows us to own it and approach a nonprofit entity that can hold an affordable housing restriction in it. Once that restriction is placed on the property, we can get the lien released, get the estate to settle it, record the title, and then we could start the process that people are talking about here tonight.
Did that answer your question? Yes? Okay, great. At this time, we're just voting to amend Article 4 as proposed, so that it states it's moved and seconded that the town vote to authorize the select board to accept Title II, and convey an affordable housing restriction, in a property located at 164 Street. It's simplifying and taking out that final step. A vote in the affirmative amends the article so that it reads that. A vote in the no means that we will return to the motion as it is written on the green sheet. Everyone understand what we're going to do? We're going to use our clickers. The light will go on in a moment. There it is. A vote in the affirmative means you want to amend the motion as proposed. A vote in the negative means you want to return to the motion language as on your page, your green page, titled Article 4. Motion to amend requires a majority vote. If your clicker did not register your vote correctly, please go see the town clerk and she will correct your vote. At this time, the motion to amend requires a simple majority. There's 98 in the affirmative, 50 in the negative. The motion passes by over a majority. Returning back, so this now, at this time, we move back to Article 4 as amended. We're debating the main topic. I don't anticipate there'll be much debate left. We kind of had talked about this a lot, but I do want to allow, if the residents of that area wanted to speak on the motion under Article 4, to give them that opportunity for you to hear them.
All right, thank you. My name is Matt Pierce. This is my wife, Alyssa. A lot of debate had happened. I came in tonight with a little bit of a different script, but I appreciate the healthy debate and the members of our precinct and the open discussion. We've lived in town for 17 years. We own a two-family. We've lived at the direct abutter right behind this property at 160 Forest Street for 11 years. We also own a commercial building in town. We're very vested in this town. We love this town. And I think what first struck us when we heard about this situation was that nobody let us know anything. We didn't know anything about it, nothing. That there could be a affordable housing monster property that could possibly happen, but nope, nobody had let us know about it. And I think that was our biggest concern. We've been behind the property for 11 years. Jim Soro over here, he's been 50 years next to this property. 50 years, and he didn't know anything about it either happening. And I just think that what we came in with originally was to see that some pause was had, to listen to the residences who are going to be most affected by this. We are in favor of this amendment, so I appreciate that happening. That's why we're standing up here as long as we did, and think that the due process of listening was appropriate and had. So that's all we wanted to say as a direct abutter, that I think our voice was something to be heard and should be listened to.
Thank you very much.
No, it's fine. Our biggest issue was that the house remains a single-family dwelling. That it currently is. It's a beautiful Cape house, appropriate with the neighborhood. And in the meeting on October 16th, the House Partnership Board said, if it went this way into affordable housing and it went 40B, it said, direct quote was, we could push the zoning. And that was our biggest concern, is whatever you define push the zoning as. I feel like any neighbor would be interested in knowing what does that term mean. So this amendment, I believe, protects the interests of the neighborhood.
Thank you for that. At this time, town meeting, I believe you're ready for the vote. A 2/3 vote is required. It is voting on Article 4 as amended. Is it a point of information?
Yes.
All right, it better be.
I'm not going to debate this. It really is a point of information. Sorry, Pamela Court, Precinct 5. I want to just make sure I understand. So we've made an amendment to this, and it puts the onus a little bit back on the select board, but I'm curious if this does happen, can it move forward with the select board sort of overseeing it and the Affordable Housing Trust still working on it, knowing that we would be coming back at Springtown meeting to then do an approval for the conveyance? Can some of that work be done a little bit ahead of time so that we're not worried about how overloaded our select board is with the 1.5 million other things they have to do? Thank you.
Thank you. They do have options before them. I believe the answer is yes. But they also can do, from a moderator's perspective, they also can do a special meeting, which puts it at the end of our Springtown meeting, which gives them some more time as well. And they can also wait until the fall if they need to. There's other options they do have for town meetings purposes for the warrant. Did you have anything you would like to say, Select Board, further? All set? You agree? Okay. So with that, a 2/3 vote required. We'll use our clickers. This is to consider Article 4 as amended. A vote in the affirmative means that you would like to the town to authorize the select board to accept the title and convey an affordable housing restriction on 160 Forest Street. A vote in the negative means you do not want the select board to accept that title and convey an affordable housing restriction on that property. Everyone understand? Great. 30 seconds. Two-thirds vote required, 150 having voted. 100 required for adoption. There's 143 in the affirmative, 7 in the negative. The motion passes by over a two-thirds vote. We are moving now on to Article 20. Article 20 is brought to you by Michelle Pryor, member of the Select Board. It is a citizen's petition, but the elected officials of the executive branch of government are allowed to put citizens' petitions without the required 10 people signatures. So as it says, Michelle Pryor, it is a citizen's petition. Article 20 is moved and seconded to approve Article 20 as written in the warrant. It is also on page 52 of your booklet. Oh, is that color? There was
a slight friendly amendment from the
Committee on Government Regulations
and
that has come in.
It was shared the first night of town meeting. I will have it in my presentation. It's on the website. It's been out there for more than 10 days. But I will go over that change, I promise. Okay, so time starts now? Second? Okay. Thank you.
You know how this works. You're the chair of the Select Board.
Well, I know how you keep time as well. So this motion, this article, is brought to you by me, and this is the current bylaw. Consists of 15 voters who shall hold no other town office. So I'm not looking to change the number. I'm not looking to change who appoints. I'm not looking to change the terms, which 5 people per year that cycle through. What I'm looking to do is rectify a conflict that was identified in the spring. Town council's interpretation of hold no other office meant that FinCom members could not serve on any other committee, such as energy management or the CPA advisory committee. So what I'm hoping to do with this amendment is to strike holding other office and specifying that they don't hold any other elective office or appointive office other than as an elected member of town meeting, which many of them are. Also, to state that no town employee shall serve as a finance committee member. That was not clear as well. And that while they're not on other elective office other than town meeting, they're not a town employee. Nothing prohibits a member of the finance committee from serving on another committee, board, or commission when such service is permitted by a provision of the bylaws, the town charter, or a vote of the town meeting. That's what I'm trying to do. We have a long tradition of decades of appointing finance committee, giving them appointment authority to other boards and committees that get formed. So we're not looking to add members, change the term of office, or change the composition. These are some committees that Finance Committee currently appoints to. Capital Planning. The little key in the back is Capital Planning is in the bylaw. Energy Management was a Select Board committee that now persists. EFPBC was created by the town meeting. The Retiree Health Insurance Advisory Committee is a town meeting committee. In the past, we had a Community Preservation Act Advisory Committee, Transfer Station Working Group formed by the Select Board, and my favorite, Right Log Farm, used to actually get select FinCom appointees. I was appointed to Right Log Farm Conservancy Board in 2018. I was a former FinCom member, appointed by the Finance Committee. I took the seat of a sitting FinCom member who was on the board at that time. So we have other town meetings and other select boards, and they have felt it wise to include the perspective of the Finance Committee on these other boards. Why have them? Well, Finance Committee members have current knowledge of tax revenues, tax rates, debt service that we pay as a town. They track borrowing, they track operational costs. They know what needs to be included in the annual budget. With the CPA work that came in the spring before the CPA bylaw was passed, we had a FinCom appointee calculating the per tax household impact of the CPA. You all saw that at town meeting. And without current knowledge of what's going on within our budget, myself, who's been off the Finance Committee for 9 years, wouldn't know debt service, may not know our cost of energy. But when we come before town meeting and say we want to put solar panels on the roof of Lynch, we had Finance Committee people in those meetings working on return on investment for us. When we look at retiree health insurance and OPEB, We have finance committee people saying long-term obligations for health insurance will cost us X. They bring specific expertise to the conversations as the town debates initiatives, programs, and other opportunities. So, adopting this amendment clarifies that serving on town meeting does not impede finance committee. Good news, since you've all been serving there for years, so did I. Clarifies no town staff, and provides flexibility to appoint current or past finance committee members or anybody else to boards and committees that they are invited to serve on or might be in the future. It does not create new seats at the table. It does not create new committees to which to appoint finance committee members. It just allows them to fill the openings that are already there. If we don't adopt this amendment and we run the risk of, well, you're on FinCom, you can't go to Energy's meetings, you can't be on Capital, they join the long list of committees looking for volunteers, such as the Personnel Board needs volunteers. We need a constable. The Audit Advisory Committee is looking for volunteers. WinCam, we have open seats on boards and committees every time. We post them on our agendas every time we meet. So to not allow FinCom to pull from their current members to populate other places, I think leaves some seats unfilled and leaves some expertise outside of the discussion. So please support this change. My colleagues on the Committee of Government Regulations, Megan and Colin Simpson, reviewed this motion, actually made a friendly amendment. Thank you for that. So it has been ruled in order by government regs. It maintains the status quo. It lets us benefit from the knowledge that they bring. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we proceed, I read the motion into order. There is a friendly amendment. You all received it. My apologies as I didn't point it out. It's actually on a white piece of paper, so it might blend in. At the top, it says Article 20, and it says amended motion going across. And at this time, I do need to do some clerical work to bring it back into order. There's a motion, a friendly amendment on Article 20 that reads, is moved and seconded that the town vote to amend Chapter 2, Section 4.1.2 of the Winchester Code of Bylaws by replacing Section 4.1.2 thereof with the following. Composition, terms of office. The Finance Committee shall consist of 15 voters, striking who shall hold no other town office. From there it shall read, shall hold no other elective or appointive town office other than as elected members of town meeting. In addition, no town employee shall serve as a finance committee member. However, nothing herein shall prohibit a member of the finance committee from serving on another committee, board, or commission when such service is permitted by a provision of the bylaws, the town charter, or a vote of the town meeting. The members shall be appointed in terms of 3 years, so arranged that the terms of office of 5 members shall expire each year. Do we have a motion to? Yep.
I believe the word who should not be struck. There's a discrepancy between the page and the slide in Ms. Pryor's presentation.
You are correct. Does the meeting require me to reread it and come? Thank you. Is there a motion to amend? Yes. Is there a second? All right. I don't believe we need to debate this. It is a clerical issue, but all those in favor, 2/3 required? Aye. Are those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion to amend is accepted. With that, Article 20, do we have a recommendation from the Select Board? Their Vice Chair.
Madam Moderator, we voted favorable action 3-2.
Thank you, and I anticipate that the Finance Committee has some words. Welcome. Their Chair.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you, Chair Pryor, for sponsoring this article, and thank you, Town Meeting. So the Finance Committee voted favorable action on this article unanimously for 2 reasons. Number one, as mentioned, it maintains the status quo. We've been participating in other committees for years and decades. We think it is appropriate to align the language of the bylaws to what's actually happening. Further, the Committee on Government Regulations, as mentioned, reviewed and offered a favorable amendment. So they can take a holistic approach to all our bylaws and figure out the go forward, but allow us to continue participating in what we're doing. Number 2, if we look at the impact and value, I think through this town meeting, there's no shortage of issues for us to solve, but I think through our 3 days together, we've made progress together. And that progress on structurally balanced budgets, free cash, understanding that we have close to $30 million due to the discipline of having a structurally balanced budget. understanding our capital woes. Are we spending enough money? No. But we went from a sinking Titanic to a boat that's being pulled by a smaller boat, which is progress. So we'd like to continue on that progress and collaborating across committees. I would also like to thank Madam Moderator for calling out the need for more transparency to town meeting in spring town meeting. So a verbal report on our 5-year capital plan so that you were in the best position possible to make decisions. As I mentioned in our update last week, that we know we work for town meeting. We take that responsibility seriously. So we ask tough questions, we look for spirited debate, all in the view of giving you the best information possible. So I ask you to support this article. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee on Government Regulations, did you want to make any comments? Okay, they are all set. At this time, any boards or committees, any town meeting members with questions or comments? Seeing no one rise, I believe you're ready for the vote. A majority vote is required. Oh.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Anthea Brady, Precinct 1. One reason that I'd just like to say I think this article is a bit premature. This was brought to the Select Board in September, and one of the questions that I raised, which I'm happy to ask through you to possibly the town clerk, is in the creation of our bylaws over time and in the creation of these inconsistencies of our bylaws over time, do we have documentation of when the bylaw was created that said that FinCom should hold no other elective office, as well as timelines for when the EFPBC portions, which I understand there were potentially 3 amendments to EFPBC, as well as capital, and any of the other inconsistencies that have arisen over time. Are we aware of when those happened and what was the intent of town meeting at the time?
At this time, to the town clerk in the records, do you have any indication of when the language was put in place that the Finance Committee shall hold no other office and any other of those changes that put them in office from town meeting?
Thank you, town meeting. That language was actually part of the original vote when you voted in the Code of Bylaw, when you became a town chartered community, 1976. And then, for an example, EFPBC was created by the town meeting in 1995 with a plethora of amendments over the years. But the intent of that original one, Madam Moderator, was that Finance Committee would sit on that.
Any further questions?
Thank you.
Further comment?
Hi, Bill McGonigal, Precinct 3, also on the Select Board, and one of the 2 who did not vote in favor of this article. I agree with Michelle that there is a conflict in our bylaws, and I agree very strongly that the Finance Committee should be liaisoning with the various boards and committees around this town. They do have an expertise, they do have knowledge. Where we disagree is exactly how that needs to be done. And whether or not they should have votes on those boards and controlling the way that those boards might move. Because decisions are made in those meetings that determine what gets brought in front of you, town meeting. And the way I read the bylaw, the way I see the duties of the Finance Committee is not to necessarily be serving on those boards directly. It's to be advising you, and they've admitted that, they've said that. And I want them to be doing that here, in front of all of you, to hear what they're saying and why they're voting and why they're doing it. And I want them to be independent, and that goes 2 different ways. I want them to be giving an independent analysis as the Finance Committee and not being weighed down by any sort of time or investment that they have in these other committees. And I don't want them bringing whatever is happening at the Finance Committee and necessarily imposing it upon those other boards and committees. I heard, I believe it was either Mr. Jurius or Mr. Vanelio once explain how difficult it was for them to be both a planning board member and a capital planning member and have to wear those 2 different hats and separate them. I don't want Finance Committee worried about that. I want clear, independent advice. And I want them giving it directly to you. And so while this is fixing a discrepancy, I see it as just a little bit more. I see it as a time for us to kind of think about what we want our Finance Committee to do, how we want it to relate to us as town meeting. And I would rather it be more direct at town meeting. And I've spoken to a number of you about this in the past. Some of you have been around a lot longer than I have. You've told me about the way Finance Committee used to work, the relationship it used to have. Some of you even were able to talk to people who drafted this charter back in the 70s. And I've been given the impression that the idea was to have them much more independent and not directly involved in the nitty-gritty of these subcommittees and various boards. And that's the direction I'd like to head. What's great now is that's my opinion. And Michelle has another one, and they're both reasonable. I just ask you to give them both a try because I think this is going to just give us an idea of how we're going to operate in the future. But there really is no wrong answer. And I really hope that however this turns out, the spirit of collaboration continues because that's what's most important in getting the work done. Thank you.
Thank you. Further on the question?
Maura Sullivan, Precinct 1. Our current bylaw has an ambiguity because people have differing opinions of what the phrase "no other town office" means, and it's caused some issues. We can have a bigger conversation about the role of the Finance Committee, but that is not before you tonight. Tonight is about removing ambiguity and aligning our bylaws with our current practice. I like Article 20 because it's based on Arlington's language and it gets the job done. Like Winchester, Arlington's FinCom has a seat on their Capital Planning Committee, so it was a good model to follow in drafting Article 20. I wanted to share a conversation that another town meeting member and I had with a member of Arlington's Finance Committee last month. We asked this person what she thought about the Finance Committee serving on capital planning. She said it was invaluable because it allowed the two boards to work closely together so that everybody was on the same page. But again, where and how FinCom should sit, the bigger picture is not before us. That is a job for a decennial review committee and ultimately town meeting at a future session. If we don't pass Article 20, we leave ourselves open to conflict. FinCom appointments may be challenged and members may feel they are not legitimate members of the other boards or committee on which they sit. I hope you will join me in voting yes.
Further on the question, and then we'll go to the vote.
Susan McPhee, Precinct 3. I've been working as the Energy Conservation Coordinator, working with the Energy Management Committee for over 15 years. And during that time, the participation of people from FinCom has been really valuable. And I think it goes in both directions. I can only speak for the Energy Management Committee, but having the perspective of what's going on financially in the town when we're concerned only with energy, the finance of energy, it's really a great back and forth, and it's valuable. And I think that if it's similar with the other boards, it's a positive thing. I don't see a downside. I encourage you to vote favorable action.
Thank you very much. At this time, a majority vote is required. We're voting on Article 20. A vote in the affirmative will accept the motion as presented by Ms. Pryor as amended, and will address Section 4.1.2 of our Winchester Code of Bylaws. A vote in the negative will keep our bylaws as they are currently written. If your clickers did not, please go see the town clerk, but at this time I think there's enough clarity to call the vote. 129 in the affirmative, 17 in the negative. The affirmative has it and the motion passes. Moving on to Article 22. Article 22 is another citizen petition. As a reminder, Article 21 was withdrawn by the citizens. And so we will be moving on to 22. 22 is a non-binding article for town meeting. We typically do not see these very often. I have been asked as the moderator if I can call it out of order for non-binding. I am not allowed to call it out of order. Non-binding are allowed to come before the meeting. Just like the select board, they accept what comes to them and puts on the warrant. And unless it's illegal, then they have a little thing there they can do. And as the moderator, it's my responsibility to accept that warrant and any motions that apply to that warrant. On behalf of Article 22, it is moved and seconded to approve Article 22 as written in your motion booklet on page 54. On behalf of the citizens who petitioned for it, Mr. Seamus Brady.
Good evening, Madam Moderator, members of town meeting, town staff, and esteemed guest. I am here to present Article 22. Some of you might have recalled that Madam Moderator invited us to send her our walk-up song, and I did that at exactly 9 p.m. that first Thursday. At this time, I'd like to personally thank her for not playing the song I requested. Can only say it was a song by Nelly from the early 2000s that commented extensively on the temperature. And next I turn to one of my favorite sources, Wikipedia. Term limits date back to the American Revolution, and prior to that to the democracies and republics of antiquity. The Council of 500 and ancient Spartans rotated its entire membership annually, as did the Ephrat and ancient Sparta. In Winchester, we currently do not have any town limits for any of our elected offices. Effectively, there are no kings but us. The need for term limits is based on the idea that term limits not only encourage but guarantee that new people will be serving us in a variety of elected offices. The genesis for this article was conversations I have been having with residents of Winchester for the last 8 years, but especially the last few years. The people I spoke to seek out new ideas and new perspectives and believe that with term limits, we are much more likely to access the many additional talented people in our town. I've included the last 10 elections in our packet so you can see that by and large, incumbents are almost impossible to defeat in our local town elections. Turnout is low, and sadly so is interest. However, when we have open seats, especially lately, we get a number of candidates who offer a variety of talents and perspectives to our town. I've heard of a culture in town that discourages running against incumbents. Yet here in Massachusetts, some of our strongest representatives did not stand on the sidelines when they were told to wait their turn. I realize that the current wording of this article leaves it short of enacting term limits. That was despite the efforts of quite a few people to get the language right. However, as it stands, it will help to express the will of town meeting. So I humbly ask for your support of Article 22 and very much look forward to our discussion. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. May we have a recommendation from the Select Board?
I will say you'll have feedback. I'm not sure it's a recommendation. When considering this article, 3 members abstained and 2 voted no. So the recommendation was favorable action, for which 3 members abstained and 2 voted no. So I don't think that's support, but I don't think we have a recommendation either.
Thank you. May we have a recommendation from the Planning Board?
Thank you very much, Brian Vernellia, Vice Chair of the Planning Board. The Planning Board voted 5-0 against this article. The Planning Board struggles to get candidates even in uncontested races, and we decided we couldn't afford to limit who can run for a seat. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Did the school committee take a position? Excuse me, Matt. Thank you.
Seeing as how the town council has advised that this is non-binding and non-operative language, and after a fair amount of discussion, the school committee feels it's inappropriate and unnecessary to take a position.
Thank you. At this time, town meeting members, any questions or comments? Please come to the mics. What? Oh, the Board of Health. My apologies. Board of Health? One moment, Mr. Brunsback.
Really quick, Greg Swicky, Chair of the Board of Health. We voted 3-0 unfavorable action as the motion currently stands and as written. Even though we may support the concept, we did not feel that this was ready for any prime time.
Thank you.
Lance Grensback, Precinct 3. Madam Moderator, ladies and gentlemen. This article offers us a solution, but without any convincing evidence that it's actually needed. The sponsor provided a good deal of paper, but no analysis, so I was tempted. I went back and looked at the elections for Select Board as an example. Since they were talking about an 18-year period in which you could only serve 2 terms, I thought I'd look back for the last 18 years, so I did. It took a bit of scrubbing. Over the last 18 years, we have had 21 people serving on the Select Board. Of those 21, 19 served 2 terms or less. 13 served only 1 term. A few more served 2 terms. Basically, the short-term answer is they're already doing term limiting. The other thing we noticed that was of the 16 of the 18 elections that have been held over that period, there was a new person joining that board at every one of those 16 elections. So the question is, are we seeing a good deal of turnover? Yes. Would this proposal improve that? I don't think so. We're already doing it. I think it would add and discourage people doing it. Now, are there other boards where the turnover may be slower? I didn't bother to go through all those numbers, but as Mr. Vinaglia pointed out, we have more problems getting people to run for the boards than we do to getting rid of incumbents. I think this is a solution that doesn't have a good argument for it, and we should vote it down. Thank you.
Thank you. Further on the question, town meeting members?
Madam Moderator, Kathleen Bodie, Precinct 3. I've come before you in opposition to this motion. As Mr. Grensback said, it really is a solution without a problem. One of the things that I have seen over the years is it's very difficult, actually, for people to run for these positions. So I don't think that there is a need for particular turnover. I see that even on the school committee, that there has been regularly new people that have joined the committee over the last 10 years. The other issue is that one of the things that really is a benefit to having this open is that there are people who have stayed longer than 2 terms, not many, but they bring institutional knowledge, regulatory knowledge, and also knowledge about actions and results. Voters in town are the term limiters, and we need to remember that. If the town does not want someone to have multiple terms, they can vote them out of office. So again, I urge everyone to vote this motion down because I don't think it really provides an answer to a lot of our needs, which is to encourage more people to participate in the electoral process. Thank you.
Thank you. Town meeting member?
Hi, Sarah Jones-Girardi, Precinct 3. I swear I'll be quick because Kathy kind of said what I was going to say about institutional knowledge. I think that's really critical. I served on school committee many years ago, and Kathy and Sarah Swiger were on the committee ahead of me, and I just don't think that, I at least would have understood all they had gone before me without their institutional knowledge and also their mentorship. They really, kind of brought me along and taught me the ways of the world as I wandered through my first little bit of school committee. So I'm very grateful to them, and I think that I was a better servant for that. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Diabjurius, Precinct 8, also on the planning board. I'm going to not bend over. So I actually would like to thank the proponents for bringing this forward. I'm not against term limits, but I think the bigger problem with democracy in this town, and I'm going to call it that, is that people don't run for office. I've been on the planning board this is my 9th year. I've had 1 contested election. I don't know of any other member on the planning board for time immemorial who's gone through a contested election. 2 of our current members were actually write-in candidates because we didn't have people running. When we do have an empty seat on the board because someone has left in the middle of a term, the number of people who show up to get appointed by the joint select and planning boards far exceeds the number of people who have ever run. So, you know, running for office is not an easy thing. When I first ran, which was contested and I lost many, many years ago, we just sent postcards out. Now you need election committees, you need signs, you need an apparatus. I think it's really hard for people to run for office. And that's the bigger problem I see in our town, is getting more people willing to spend the time and understand what it takes to run a mostly volunteer town. So I do understand the desire for term limits, to see turnover, to make sure that we are getting fresh ideas. I just think that we have a lot more work to do on getting people out there and running, making it easier for people to run, to get this dialogue and these contrasting ideas in. So maybe when we're able to have lots of contested elections, we can think about it, but I think it's premature. But I really want to thank the proponents. I think we really have to look at how we run our resident-run government. Thank you.
Thank you. A non-town meeting member has requested to speak to the meeting regarding this. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Please proceed. Motion passes. Nope. It might be battery. Do you wanna? Nope, it might be the battery is dead. WinCam will be on that. We'll come back to you in a moment.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Carol Savage, Precinct 5. I also applaud the intent of this motion, but I oppose it. I do agree that we could do a better job informing the residents of the town about how important a volunteer town government is to the residents of the town. And there have been a number of initiatives that have taken place in the last 2 years that are helping to spread awareness. The Winchester News is a great initiative. If anyone watching is not yet subscribing to the Winchester News, it's a great way to learn about not only town government, but other community actions going on in the town. The town has created a communication plan that should be helping to create greater awareness of what town government does in the town. And the Winchester Town Meeting Members Association, winchestertmma.org, is a website that's public that does convey information about what we do here in town meeting. And if we can enliven all of those websites and create greater awareness of how important participation by residents is in town government, we could encourage more participation in town meeting, which then becomes a feeder for a lot of these boards. So it is critically important that we have turnover on these boards, but I don't think this is a solution. I think we all own spreading awareness about the importance of the work we do.
Thank you. We have 3 further speakers, and then we'll call the vote.
Battery power about the issue of power. Thank you, Madam Moderator. I served on the Finance Committee for 4 years, and I saw the intersection between various boards and officials and commissions. And term limits is kind of a buzz phrase that has been popular in recent years. But in fact, in this town government, which is volunteer, you see that people who have been on boards or commissions for many years, in most cases, have tremendous knowledge and value. If there's real concern, then possibly a provision could be added to the town rules that say that somebody who is not desired there be some signature requirement and a recall on the town election, not a special election, but on the town election that would allow a removal if that is actually a problem. I don't see the problem, and I think it's important that we do, as other speakers have said, gain more publicity about local government. A lot of people come from other places who have spoken specifically that they're looking for county government, and we don't have one that works here. So I would think that this thing should be set aside. It sounds good, but it in practice doesn't really help very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Further on the question? Yep. We're going to go to the vote in 2 speakers. It's the same exact thing. Voting no, it definitely postpones it. If it's acceptable, will you withdraw, please, and let them finish, and we'll go to the vote? And it's the same thing? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. This is going to be a really quick story. So when we wanted to get more volunteers and more involvement at Ambrose, what we did was set term limits. Because after a year, that PTO president is going to step down, and if no one fills in those shoes, the party ends. And that created more community involvement. And though, again, it's on a smaller scale, for those committees that feel like they're having a difficult time filling seats to start off with, once people know that there's going to be a vacancy, they will be more motivated, and there will also be a light at the end of the tunnel, essentially. So I am in favor of term limits, and in our own smaller community, again, just a little microcosm of what we're trying to do here, it worked in getting more people involved, and more importantly, when I stepped down as PTO president at Ambrose, I actually didn't die. I'm still part of the community. I still have my information that they can easily ask me to keep that information going within our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jared Cumming, Precinct 4. I have a question through you to the appropriate person. It's the sponsor of Town Council. How is it that we got this motion or this article and it's not binding? What were the deficits? It sounds like a lot of work was involved. Can we know in a 60 or 90 second snapshot what the deficiencies were?
What do you mean by the deficiencies?
That it was not binding. Was the intent that it was not binding? Was the intent that we were not changing the bylaws? Or was the intent to just give a sense of town meeting? Or was the intent to actually impose term limits?
To the proponent, could you please provide town meeting members how you ended up with a non-binding article before the meeting?
The intent was for it to be binding, but some of the people who wrote it, myself included, did a poor job writing it, so the end result was it's not binding.
I'm very sorry to hear that, proponent. So, question in terms of indefinite postponement versus voting no. If it's indefinitely postponed, if we vote no, can it come back in the spring?
Yes.
So there's no time difference between the two?
Correct. It's only on zoning articles.
So I'm a firm supporter of this motion. I would like to work with the current proponent to make it binding. There is a desperate need for diversity of thought. We celebrate diversity in this town and inclusion, and term limits are a way to do that. This can be amended. This can be changed in ways so that if it is an uncontested election, then the incumbent can stay. And there are lots of different ways that we can do this to not have the planning board be vacant. But there are other committees where there's a great deal of demand and interest in having turnover. And so this sort of thing is critically important. We all know that the importance of term limits. Ask yourselves and think, what do you think about the Supreme Court currently, and would you like to see term limits there? So this is the sort of thing where term limits are of value for diversity. And I would like to recommend favorable sense on a vote here. I suspect it's not going to pass, but I am happy to work with the proponent in the future to make it binding. Thank you.
Thank you for that offer. I believe they're grateful. At this time, town meeting is required. A majority are ready for the vote. A majority vote is required. A vote in the affirmative votes that you would like to take a non-binding vote on the wrong page, to address term limits. A vote in the no means that you are not interested in, at this time, making a position on term limits for officials. I was going to do the clickers. I was asked to do the clickers, so I was going to do the clickers. You can also abstain if you would like at this time, as always. A simple majority required for passing. Seeing that town meeting has voted, there are 26 in the affirmative, 116 in the negative. The negative has it, and the motion fails. Moving onward to Article 25. Oh, 23, my apologies. Article 23, I don't anticipate there'll be much debate or questions on this. However, I did want to make sure that you hear from the Committee on Government Regulations, and so that's why it was not put on the consent agenda. Our motion 23 is moved and seconded that the town vote to amend of the various sections of the Code of General Bylaws of the Town of Winchester to replace certain gender-specific language with neutral terms, all in as depicted on the handout presented to the town meeting, which text to be deleted as shown with a strike-through and text to be added is underlined. It's on page 113 of your booklet. It's being presented by the Committee on Government Regulations.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, Select Board, Finance Committee, town meeting members, mice. So I'll talk to you about Article 23 tonight on behalf of the government, the Committee on Government Regulations. So this article is our first step forward as part of the decennial review process. So in Article 7, Section 9 of the Home Rule Charter, it requires our committee to read through the bylaws, suggest changes, listen to others, no less than every 10 years. So the last time this happened, according to our town clerk, was 2008, so we're a little overdue, but we started the process. So the Committee on Government Regulations has been meeting since this summer, and each of our members is assigned different chapters of the bylaws to review. Note, we're not reviewing the charter, just the 24 chapters of the bylaws, not the zoning bylaws. That's under the purview of the planning board. And the charter, that's us, but another time, not now. This is enough. We must, yeah, he's laughing, he knows. All revisions must be completed by the 2025 Springtown meeting, and the proposed updates will be reviewed at a hearing, explained in a report at Springtown meeting, and then voted by you, town meeting. So this is a review of that process, and Article 23 is the first run through that process. So the types of questions we ask for our bylaw reviews: is the bylaw out of date? Does it mention entities that no longer exist? Are there other entities that should be added and considered for the bylaw? Or have they changed names? Are there inconsistencies that could be remedied? Is anything else unclear? So this is just a sample of these types of questions. This is your decennial review committee, AKA the Committee on Government Regulations. There's one person from each precinct. Please reach out to your favorite committee member, your co-chairs, all of us. Come to our meetings. We plan to start meeting again after Thanksgiving, probably every Tuesday. We'll host boards, committees to get their perspective. So we want to hear from you. Okay, on to the meat of the example amendment for Article 23. So the motivation here, as Madam Moderator alluded earlier, several bylaw chapters contain language that is suggestive of males occupying specific roles in town government. We noted this as we were going through some of the 24 chapters. And then we combed through all 24 chapters looking for this language. And it's our goal to remove a suggestion of gender from the bylaws without changing the intent of the bylaw, making it more welcoming, very similar to the change from Board of Selectmen to Select Board. And I'll read through just one example amendment. The rest are in your motion booklet. So in Chapter 4, Sections 1.1 to 1.4 is titled Additional Powers and Duties of Town Manager. So in addition to those powers and duties given by Article 4, Section 4.2 of the Charter, the town manager shall have the following powers and duties: Instead of saying he, which clearly our town manager is not a he, the town manager shall, on or before each July, and at such other times as the selectmen may request, prepare, and submit reports. Yes, I know, we missed that one. Maybe we should catch that. No, we're a committee, and we can amend it on the floor, as prescribed in Chapter 3, Section 3.6 of these bylaws. So that's an example. There's clearly ones we missed, but we can amend it on the floor. But we hope to have your support on this amendment for Article 23, and we hope to hear from you. Thank you.
May we have a recommendation? Actually, I believe all boards and committees who reviewed it recommend favorable action. I'm going to the actual book right now to check that, to see if it still says. Oh, it does still say selectmen. There's a motion to amend. One second. There's a motion to amend Article 23 so that Chapter 4, Section 1.1 shall strike out selectmen and be changed to select board. Do we have a second? All those in favor? Any questions or comments? Seeing no one rise, I believe that town meeting is ready for the vote. A simple majority vote is required. A vote in the affirmative will change our bylaws to strike out and replace the gendered pronouns. A vote in the no means that we will keep our bylaws as is. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it and the motion passes. Moving on to Article 25. Article 25, I'm told, will be moved pretty quickly. Well, not moved and voted, but the speech will be rather rapid. No pressure. It is being brought to you by the Select Board. It requires a 2/3 vote. It is moved and seconded that the town vote to appropriate $125,000 from free cash to the Employee Health Care and Health Insurance Stabilization Fund established at the spring 2022 town meeting in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40, subsection 5B.
If only I could do those pharmaceutical disclaimers, right? So, Article 25. To appropriate $125,000 from free cash to the Employee Health Care and Health Insurance Stabilization Fund. This fund was created a few years ago. The purpose is to set aside funding specifically to offset increases in employee health insurance expenses, and town meeting approval is required to move it into and out of the fund, which you've done a couple times before, which we'll review. Health insurance costs fluctuate significantly. So the stabilization fund gives us dedicated funding sources that doesn't necessarily dip into free cash. It's purpose-built. It's purposeful for health insurance. And we have a policy Select Board voted last year to review turnbacks at the end of the fiscal year, closeouts, and to consider appropriating those from free cash into the stabilization fund at each fall town meeting. And that's what we're doing tonight, hopefully, with your support. So here's where we are with health insurance expenses over the last 9 years or so. There's a bit of a dip in 2022 to FY 2023 with plan changes. The town manager is always looking, and town staff, I should say, are always looking for carriers and changes and plan changes and changing deductibles and other things. So we saw one dip in that period, but the last couple of years, in FY25, so the current budget that we're looking at right now is $13 million. From FY23 to 24, expenditures rose 7.3%. From 24 to 25, it was 8.8%. And we've been told to expect a rate increase of 10% going into FY26. And health insurance is the single largest line item in the benefits budget of the town budget. So given that we grow at 2.5% to 3%,
10% increase is a lot. Be like the voice of God. We're going to run a mic for you. Give us 1 second. Enjoy reading, she said.
Thank you. Almost done, I swear. So currently in this fund, $293,000. Year to date, so from June through September, it's earned $3,400 in investment activity, interest income. In the spring, at spring town meeting transferred out $45,000 towards the current health insurance budget. So that nets out to a current balance of $251,000 as of September 30th, per the comptroller's report. And we are looking to use, of the $129,000, almost $130,000 that were closeouts, put $125,000 into this fund. In summary, our rating agency, Moody's, looks favorably when we have dedicated funding sources for expenses, and that spending from this increased fund balance, this infusion, plus investment earnings, could be appropriated toward anticipated growth of the health insurance budget at spring town meeting. The budget will be finance committees to do. Last year, they used some funds from this dedicated stabilization fund toward the health insurance line. We're looking to put some more money in and likely move it out in the spring. So we hope for your support, and thank you.
Thank you. The Finance Committee has recommended favorable action, but has asked to give you some comments.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. As mentioned, we voted unanimous favorable action. The primary reason is because this is coming from a reversion from free cash. Usually our position is we should not be using free cash. Since it's reverted, we got comfortable with it. We do think there's a larger strategic item to address here, as you saw that curve steepening. So we look forward to some partnership and discussions, but we voted favorably. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing no one rise, a 2/3 vote is required. We'll try a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. Moving on to Article 26. Article 26 is typically on the consent agenda. The moderator, I made the decision to pull it from the consent agenda as a motion came in 10 days prior to us taking it up this evening, but it was not in your motion booklet. So on page 124 is motion 1 and 2, and on your pink handout is motion number 3. I don't think this will take much time at this time because all boards and committees who reviewed it are recommending favorable action on all 3 motions. But I did not want to make you feel like it was being sneaked in. I wanted some transparency that there's a 3rd motion, and that was very clear to you. So on behalf of the Finance Committee, their chair.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Madam Moderator. So Article 26, Motion 3. I know this is an amendment. No. Yeah, so Article 26 before amendment is a normal article where you move some money around. Motion 1 for $17,918 is 2 purchase orders that were closed out but not fulfilled that we rolled over after conversations with our town manager, and another $7,000 for I believe a circuit breaker fix, which did not meet the minimum requirement for an insurance claim. So that's motion 1. Motion 2 for $12,000 is to replenish our reserve account. We approved a RFT for the library for some phone issues so that we deemed that an emergency. So we approved that, and that's just to make our $400,000 whole. And I know that there's an amendment coming.
Yep. Well, as the motion number 3 is coming in from the planning board. So at this time, the planning board, if you want to explain motion number 3. And it's not amended because the motion came in 10 days before.
Thank you very much,
We're taking it up.
Madam Moderator.
Yep.
I have slides here.
1 second. We'll switch the
Okay,
screen.
perfect. Good evening. I'm Brian Vernelli, Vice Chair of the Planning Board. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Planning Board to ask for your support for Article 26, Motion 3. Motion 3 asks to transfer $15,000 of free cash to the Planning Board expense budget. When you passed MBT 3A overlay last spring, and thank you very much for doing so, we acknowledged at the time we could not fully support the town-wide inclusionary affordable housing goals. To adjust these goals, we need to perform an economic feasibility analysis, or EFA. At the time of town meeting, we didn't know what the cost to do so was, and we couldn't include it in our budget. But we promised to perform this EFA as soon as possible. After town meeting, we solicited a bid from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and the price tag is $15,000. We do not have the funds available to afford this in our budget. Until we have performed an EFA, we are stuck at the lower inclusionary housing levels approved in the approved bylaw, and a project submittal could be made at any time at these levels. After the completion of the EFA, we will revise that portion of the MBTA 3A bylaw at Springtown meeting. To be clear, the EFA may not fully support our town-wide goals, but they will allow us to maximize the number of required units. If even one extra affordable unit is built as a result, that would be tremendous return on our investment. Thank you very much for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, any questions or comments on any motion 1, 2, or 3? Seeing no one rise, it's moved and seconded that the town transfer $17,918.68 from free cash to the fiscal year 25 Information Technology Department, Department 1530 expense budget. 2/3 vote required. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion passes unanimously. Motion number 2 is moved and seconded that the town transfer $12,496.20 from the free cash to the fiscal year 25 Reserve Fund, Department 9430 expense budget. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. It is moved and seconded that the town transfer $15,000 from free cash to the fiscal year 25 Planning Board, Department 1420 expense budget. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. All right, so that was 26. We are now moving to 30. Also, Article 30 was on the consent agenda. However, an amendment came in, so that was also why that one was pulled off. And your pink packet, I believe, is the new language as well. Yes, it's on the back page of your pink packet that you received from the town manager. Article 30 is coming from the town manager. Is moved and seconded that the town vote to appropriate $13,395.28 from the water and sewer retained earnings to pay the following expenditure incurred in fiscal year 24. The vendor is National Grid, and the amount is $13,395.28. As a reminder, it is not correct in your motion booklet on 128. It is correct in your pink handout as I just read it in.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. This is a standard article we have on every town meeting. We usually do our best to avoid these. This is a bill, actually 2 bills, one for May and June of 2024 that was received by our DPW for National Grid utility service to our water treatment plant. The bill was received at the end of October, so it did not get paid, obviously before the end of the fiscal year, and did not make it into the motion book, which is why you have it as a revised motion this evening. Paying bills approval through town meeting is the only way for us to pay a fiscal year bill outside of that fiscal year, which is why we're here this evening. So please approve it so that we can be in good standing with National Grid. Thank you.
Okay, it's a 4/5 vote required, so I just want to confirm that with town council. Any questions or comments? The FinCom has recommended favorable action on it and did not request to speak. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the Personnel Board. Mr. Schemetz. He's not here today. Welcome to our substitute. Welcome. We're glad to have you. And thank you for your patience in waiting. I do anticipate that we will finish the meeting tonight, and so we do not need to return next Thursday, so we're going to stay and work through this.
Good evening, Madam Moderator, town meeting. I'm not Peter Schemetz. I'm Mark Dickinson, Vice Chair of the Personnel Board. If Peter is like the starting quarterback, you know, kind of like Drew Bledsoe, I'm Tom Brady. All right, so let's, I know he's a hard act to follow, but anyhow, we got just 2 issues really for you guys to consider. One is the police patrol officer's contract, and also we're amending the personal policy guide to allow the town manager to pay an annual stipend to all town employees who are certified for the Massachusetts Certified Public Purchasers Officers. Let me get to the summaries we got here for you. So there's 5 motions. 1 through 4 are all about the police patrol officers contract. And motion 1 is the substance of it. And then we have the motions 2, 3, and 4, which are the money that move the funds to pay for it. So here's the summary of the first motion. So this is a high-level summary of the amendment that was negotiated by the town manager, Mike Town, and Mr. Toogood with the police patrol officers. They made essentially 4 items that are going to cost some money. One item essentially are the fiscal year 23, fiscal 24, fiscal year 25 that make cost of living adjustments. These are in line with what, at least according to the Personnel Board, understands with what's going on in Lexington, Belmont, and Concord. They make retroactive adjustments to cost of living. There's increases in specialist pay. Specialists are folks like the K-9 specialists, and so they get modest bumps for fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25. The other item is a reduction in the on-the-job time to achieve full Quinn bill benefits, and we also are adding another holiday, Juneteenth, that's going to add some funds. So here's our breakdown. One note here, if you see for fiscal year 23, fiscal year 24, fiscal year 25, the base salary increase year over year declines seemingly, and that's because this union contract was negotiated over a period of time, so these are the actual figures. So recently, basically we've had some retirements, and we've had 3 vacancies. There's approximately, I'm told, 27 patrol officers, but there's 3 vacancies. There's only actually 24 patrol officers, and what this means, and with a few promotions and retirements, when you look at the actual numbers here, the numbers go down over the contract time as you usually anticipate them to go up. But the bottom line here is that when we're looking at motions 2, 3, 4, and 5, there's modest amounts to transfer to support and pay for the changes that have been negotiated. So Personnel Board is recommending favorable action on motions 1, 2, 3, and 4. Here's a slide for motion 3. Looks like we have 2 motion 2s here, but if you go back to motion 2 transfers $62,100 for fiscal year 23. Motion 3 transfers $120,900 for fiscal year 24, and motion 3 transfers $91,800 for fiscal year 25. So that's motions 1, 2, 3, 4 for the police officer's wage. We're recommending favorable action on all 4 of those. And with respect to motion 5, this is an amendment to amend the town's personal policy guide with respect to just removing language that restricts the universe of town employees who are able to receive a stipend of $1,500. Essentially, the current version of the language, and you should have this language available to you, basically restricts the stipend to only town employees, and with this amendment, it allows the stipend to be awarded to management and union folks as well. So we're recommending favorable action on the 5th motion as well. So hopefully you could follow along and take some pity on the new Tom Brady who's coming in to pitch for Peter Chimetz. So, and Pete sent his wishes. He wished he could be here, but he figured you wanted to end this. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. Before you step away from the podium, there is on our motion booklet, well, in the letter that you sent out to town meeting, under motion 5, there's a strike through on the PT or CS schedules. Is that an error, or is that meant to be part of the motion?
No, that's meant to be part of the motion.
So it's not supposed to have a strike through on it?
Let me,
Striking out on the PT or CS schedules?
yes.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, the boards and committees who have reviewed this have recommended favorable action. Any questions or comments from town meeting members? All right, we'll go straight through all the motions then. It is moved and seconded that Schedule 8, Police Patrol Officers Compensation Schedule of the town's compensation plan be amended, revised, and modified in accordance with the recommendation of the Personnel Board as set forth in Appendix A, Winchester Police Patrol Officers Association, MASSCOP wage adjustments for fiscal year 23, fiscal year 24, and fiscal year 25, and pursuant to a memorandum of understanding, MOU, reached between the Select Board and the Police Patrol Officers Association, MASSCOP, dated September 30th, 2024. All those in favor? All those against? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to motion number 2, it is moved and seconded that town transfer the sum of $62,100 from the fiscal year 23 unallocated wage account 0312551 to the fiscal year 25 Police Department number 2100 Personnel Services budget to provide for the revision and adjustments to the Police Patrol Officers Association salaries and wages and other benefits related to fiscal year 2023, consistent with the memorandum of understanding between the town of Winchester and Winchester Police Patrol Officers Association, MASSCOP, dated September 30th, 2024. All those in favor? All those against? The motion passes unanimously. Motion number 3 is moved and seconded that the town transfer the sum of $120,900 from the fiscal year 24 unallocated wage account 0312561 to the fiscal year 25 Police Department number 2100 Personnel Services budget to provide for the revision and adjustments to the Police Patrol Officers Association salaries and wages and other benefits related to fiscal year 2024, consistent with the memorandum of understanding between the town of Winchester and Winchester Police Patrol Officers Association, MASSCOP, dated September 30th, 2024. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion passes unanimously. Motion number 4 is moved and seconded that the town transfer the sum of $91,800 from the fiscal year 25 unallocated wage account 0312571 to the fiscal year 25 Police Department number 2100 Personnel Services budget to provide for the revision adjustments to the Police Patrol Officers Association salaries and wages and other benefits related to fiscal year 2025, consistent with the memorandum of understanding between the town of Winchester and Winchester Police Patrol Officers Association, MASSCOP, dated September 30th, 2024. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion passes unanimously. Finally, motion number 5 is moved and seconded that the town's personnel policy guide, PPG, section X11, Roman numerals E, MCPPO stipend be amended as follows. At the discretion approval of the town manager or full-time employee, striking the words on the PT and CS schedule, returning back to who is Massachusetts Certified Public Purchasing Officer, MCPPO certified, shall receive an annual stipend amount of $1,500 payable on July 1st of each year upon proof of certification. Was that in order? Town Council? As read, that's in order. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much to the Personnel Board for all your work on that and for all your review. We have one last article, 33. We have no action before us, and that is Article 32. 32 does have amendment. This is a very nice amendment coming in. I do have an opinion on it because it's nice. Originally, it was on your motion booklet for $453,000. Since then, there has been amended to $180,000 thanks to the Select Board, as they are using a substantial amount of ARPA funds to compensate, and the bids came in lower than they anticipated. The reason that this is at the very end of your packet and on our agenda is because they put bids out while we were in the middle of town meeting. We're waiting for the bids to come back to really get a better understanding of the amount they needed from free cash, and as you can tell with the amendment, it is in our favor. On behalf of the Select Board, Mr. Fallon.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good evening, town meeting members. This is a pleasure because it's fun way to end the evening since it's for the children. This is for Mystic School. This is not just hunting season. I think everybody got this, to the moderator's point. So here's, for those of you who don't know what's at Mystic, it's the rec department and it's Kids Corner, and it provides a number of programs for daycare and for after-school activities. And what I found interesting, make sure I get the right slide up here, is the amount of usage at this facility. And you can see it's used every day by a broad cross-section of people. So what we have here is we have an issue with the heat, and Pete and his group have spent an inordinate amount of time there. But just here's, so this is for the children, it's for the employees, and it's for parents. And here's a quick story. My daughter Lauren has 2.75 kids. She lives on Myrtle Street. So last year, her daycare provider called up and said, look, we don't have enough employees, so your child has to stay home for a month, times two children. So Kathy and I, my wife and I, we took time off from work, and we watched their children. So when I was thinking about this, I definitely had the sympathy for kids being cold and the employees being cold, and I'll tell you about the field trip we made there with some folks from the school committee earlier. I just understood that if we don't solve this problem and we have a flame out, there's going to be so much dislocation for those parents and stress that I felt obligated to do something for that. And so that's what we got together with the school committee, and Michelle and Tom made a visit over to Mystic to understand what the scope of the problem was. And so the long and short of it is that the building's built in two different phases, 1920 and in 1950. And the biggest issue we have is with the piping from 1920. It's corroding, and the threading is just rotting. And every time we go in to repair it, first of all, some of that piping has asbestos on it, so you have to bring in a remediation contractor. But the problem is getting worse every year. So we went and visited Mystic last winter. We engaged Weston & Sampson, a very fine engineering firm, to help us identify the scope of the problem and provide some solutions. So initially, we had estimated it'd be $900,000 we decided that heat pumps would be the best way to solve this issue. And it was $900,000 to do the 1920s portion of the building. I do want to say, Karen, I will reiterate this again. We are going to, we're asking for $180,000 of free cash to go towards the repair to the 1920s portion and the bid alternate portion. But we are going to address where there's money left over in the engineering to address the rest of the building as far as getting the heat balanced. But let me finish the scope of the work. So the scope of the work is going to be for the 1920s building and the addition. So the total on that is we're going to use $695,000 of ARPA and $180,000 of free cash. And the free cash is going to go towards a transformer, the contingency of 15%, and project administration. Those are items we can't put ARPA money towards because the ARPA has to be committed by the end of the year. And since that number is uncertain, that's why we're coming to you and asking you for the free cash. So essentially, the boiler in the building was rebuilt 3 years ago. So it does produce an adequate amount of steam and hot water to heat the building, but the piping won't support it. So what we're going to do is address the two sections here, and then we are going to work with Weston & Sampson to understand and resolve the heat balancing issue to the other portions of the building that are not included in this contract. So that's what our ask is for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. May we have a recommendation from the Finance Committee?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. We voted unanimous favorable action on this article. We have the same reservations about process and the use of free cash, but we thought that this article was appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. May we have a recommendation from the School Committee?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. School Committee supports Article 32, and we understand that the steam piping in these older sections of the building needs to be replaced. We've also heard very much from the community their concerns about the cold spaces in the second floor annex that is not in the contract. But we do understand that Weston and Sampson, the engineer, will be investigating the second floor annex heating and is looking to make some modest improvements to the heating there.
Thank you. The modification came in after 10 days. I just want to waive the 10-day requirement for the motion. All those in favor of waiving the 10-day notification of the motion adjustment, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, the ayes have it, and the motion is as in your orange packet. Further on the question, town meeting members, please come to the mics if you have any questions or comments.
Megan Blackwell, Precinct 7, totally in support of this article, but just a quick question through you, Madam Moderator. I was surprised that the EFPBC wasn't a co-sponsor of this. Could someone comment why?
To the proponent of this article, Select Board, do you have any information about the EFPBC's role in this, if any?
As it relates to co-sponsor, the school committee controls the building, the select board controls the ARPA funding and engaged the engineer. AFPBC's chair was involved in the engineering of the initial design and modifications, reviewed the plans, and he's an electrician by trade, so we actually had him go through what we had as a proposed solution, so he was brought in to the process, but the sponsorship were the funding agency and the group, that agency, the funding board, and the group that controls the building.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, it's moved and seconded that the town vote to appropriate $180,000 from free cash to pay costs for the repair and construction of improvements to address deficiencies in the heating system at the Mystic School, including but not limited to equipment, construction, and engineering, and all costs incidental or related thereto, and further that the town manager shall be authorized to have oversight of the project, and that in accordance with Section 4-2 of the Town of Winchester Home Rule Charter, the town manager shall have the authority to enter into contracts and approve payments with respect to the project. The vote is a majority required. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. That concludes the business that is before us for a fall town meeting for 2024. May I have a motion to adjourn and close the meeting? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. As you may have just heard, town meeting's third and final session of the fall Winchester town meeting has just adjourned. My name is Alan Iden. Let's recap what we went through this evening. Very important article. Article 29 was the funding for WinCam. WinCam gets its majority of its funding from the cable TV licensees Comcast and Verizon. We did get a check in late, but that money has to be received by the town and then appropriated by town meeting. A check came in from Comcast for about $50,000 just a week or so ago, and that was amended to add that. So that money was appropriated. for WinCam. Majority of the first half discussion was on Article 4, which was concerning a donation of a house at 160 Forest Street. This house was donated upon the death of the owner, Marcia Chase Rice, who passed away in 2020. She left it to the town. There's been litigation has been holding up town taking title to this. A major factor was a lien of $700,000 by Mass Health. Mass Health has agreed, much to apparently the town's administration's surprise. They waived the lien as long as it's going to be restricted to affordable housing. But this must be settled by mid-January, or that offer to recuse the lien would be dropped. So we heard several legal steps that needed to be pursued. After town meeting approves it, the motion is to receive the title. The affordable house. The intent is to transfer this property to the Affordable Housing Trust. There is probably $300,000 to $400,000 worth of work that needs to be done in the house to make it fully habitable. Let's see. The comments were that the trust can work faster to get it developed and sold to low, moderate income households than the select board. But we heard from several town meeting members, particularly people in the neighborhood, that wanted to make sure the house is preserved as is, at least as far as the appearance and the size. It's a small Cape house, so it dates back to, I believe, 1920. I'm not sure of that, but it's a fairly old house, and they want to keep the look and the feel of it. It's a fairly small lot and a modestly sized house. One town meeting member wanted to be assured it might not be developed as a 40B property, in other words, sold, knocked down, and rebuilt into something larger. Another town meeting member said that her will wants it known as the Chase House. It's an attractive house and could have an accessory dwelling unit, ADU, and make it into 2 affordable units. And raised the possibility that Community Preservation Act, which was just voted by town meeting, funds could be used to renovate it because it would be a historic property and an affordable property. Another town meeting member gave a motion for a deed restriction limiting significant exterior modifications or moving it on the lot, but that was ruled out of order. There was several heads need to go together on some of these legal issues, so we took a recess. Town meeting had an amendment to convey with the affordable housing restriction, convey it to the select board. That passed by 98 to 50. We did hear from a resident of the area that said the residents were left in the dark. They knew nothing about what was going on with it and did not have any input into it, but they want the house, again, to remain as it is, at least exterior-wise. In the end, after a lot of discussion and a lot of head-scratching, the Article 4 was passed by 143 to 7 to acquire the property at 160 Forest Street. Article 20 was the next one, was the composition of the Finance Committee. There's some clarifications there that Finance Committee cannot serve on other offices or boards except as a town meeting member. No town employees can be on the Finance Committee. But there's some clarification. There was clarification wanted there so that Finance Committee members could serve on other committees that they are invited on as advisors. And exemptions can be authorized by town meeting. So this article essentially clarifies the current practice of some Finance Committee members going on to other boards as advisory. That was Article 20, passed by a vote of 129 to 17. Article 22 was a citizen's position to introduce term limits for the moderator, the select board, the school committee, the planning board, and the Board of Health. 2 terms, limits of 2 terms in 18 years, except for the moderator, 6 terms. It was a non-binding article because it's not in the bylaws of the town. but the proponent said it was needed to access talented people in town. The Finance Committee opposed it. They said they struggled to attract volunteers. Another town meeting member said there was a good deal of turnover already, and this was a solution in search of a problem. Another town meeting member said it sacrifices institutional knowledge. There aren't enough candidates available, and that running for an office is hard. The comment was that when there are vacancies to be appointed, seem to be enough people to do it, but not running. People don't want to run for that in an election. Another town meeting member said that term limits are important for diversity, and that town meeting member also offered to work with the proponent of the article on redrafting it. But that article did fail by a vote of 26 to 116 for term limits. Article 23 was to go through our bylaws and replace certain terms with gender-neutral terms. Specifics will be presented to the town meeting in the spring by the Committee on Government Regulations. A good example is just replacing the word chairman with chair, similar to what was done with the Select Board, formerly the Board of Selectmen. That passed unanimously. Article 25 was appropriate $125,000 from free cash to the Employee Health Stabilization Fund, and we heard a bit about the soaring costs of health care for town employees. That passed. Article 26 was transfer some small amounts totaling $43,000 among accounts from free cash to cover expenses. Article 30 was an authorization to pay an old National Grid bill from last year. Bills incurred in the previous fiscal year must come before town meeting to be approved. That was passed. We heard from the Personnel Board mainly about the police patrol officer's contract and the transfers needed to fund that and approve certain stipends and classifications. That passed, again, unanimously. And last article of the night was for repairs to the Mystic School heating system. We heard that the total cost was going to be somewhere around $900,000. There were some ARPA funds used on it, and some bids came in lower. The main article was to appropriate $180,000 to make repairs on the system that we heard dates back to the 1920 construction of the school. That was passed unanimously. And that wrapped up town meeting. That wrapped up the third and final session of Winchester's Fall Town Meeting, and actually leaving fairly early. We thought it'd be another 4-hour session, but we are wrapping up tonight. We want to thank you for joining us for our WinCam coverage of Winchester's town meetings, and we wish you, if we don't see you, wish you a great, healthy, and happy holiday season for all of us here at WinCam. I'm Alan Iden. Have a good night.